Hey guys. This is a complete story. This is what if Naruto was a Mokuton user. In a world where Itachi truly wiped out every last Uchiha, Zetsu is at a loss for what to do. After all his schemes to resurrect Kaguya, he suddenly lost his most useful minions. Drastic measures were needed to acquire Uzumaki Naruto. Starts shortly after the Tsunade retrieval arc. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 1, Resurrection. A parody of a human being. That is how one could describe the entity that rose from the ground, with its right half black and left half white, encased in what seemed like two Venus flytrap-like leaves which emerged from its sides. This entity was called Zetsu. Or rather, its white half was Shirozetsu, while the black half was Kurozetsu. The white half was a silly chatterbox, carefree and playfully blundering his way through life, while the black half was serious and knowledgeable. The two were distinctly different entities, yet somehow one at the same time. After all, the parasitic black half needed a host to survive on, and to carry on the will of his mother. The countless clones of the white half were well suited for his plans. The way you can just grow from the roots is interesting. A gravelly voice welcomed him. You sure those white things don't have a heart? How rude, white Zetsu pouted. Shut up, fool, black Zetsu silenced his other half. You were quite thorough, Kakuzu. You knew that before you hired me. The S-rank missing Nin from Takigakure shrugged. He was probably one of the few people who Zetsu knew who wasn't even fazed at the sight of his strange plant-like body. Then again, Kakuzu was rather peculiar himself as well. A battle had just ended, and the black threads which grew from Kakuzu's body, due to the Kenjutsu Jiangdu, were still stitching his wounds. Seems like you had quite a fight. Of course he did. It was Hatake Kakashi who opposed him. He was definitely someone who had earned the right to carry such a bounty, Kakuzu admitted, his voice virtually devoid of any emotion except a slight annoyance. Kakashi had, after all, taken out two of Kakazu's hearts. Good thing that he had an affinity for Raidon. He skewered my lightning heart, so having a way of replacing it right away is quite convenient. Now, all I need is a water heart. You don't happen to have an affinity for Suiton? No. We told you we don't have a heart. Nor organs. We can't even poop. Kakuzu lifted the corpse of a gray-haired shinobi from the ground. The Jonin from Konoha had put up quite the fight, but in the end, Kakuzu had been the one who had the greater reserves. It had taken an annoyingly long time before the Hatake had finally run out of chakra, though. The deaths of his cute little genin had sent him into a fury that had cost Kakuzu his first heart. The annoying Chidori had cost him a second. 50 million ryo, 30 without his Sharingan. Kakuzu became uncharacteristically happy, or whatever passed for happiness for the miserly man, at the idea of the money he had just earned. Keep the eye. We don't need it. Still not sure why we want the boy though. He's pivotal to our plans, the black-haired boy. Kakuzu wondered. His abilities with ink were quite unusual, but nothing special. The Yamanaka boy was stronger, but lacked any special ability. Naruto-kun is no Yamanaka, the whiter half of Zetsu giggled. Blonde, where's the clan symbol? And now that you mention it, he didn't use their techniques. Kakuzu frowned slightly while putting on his cloak again. Why him? You killed the pink-haired girl instantly, but kept the boys alive like we asked. Good work. But only barely, his body is nearly severed in two. His wounds don't matter. We've regrown Tobi after the Obito disaster, remember? Oh, so you're going to use the new Tobi just like the old one? It's still sad that he and the Uchiha died. Uchiha Itachi was an annoying impediment to our plans. The way you two keep arguing with yourselves is annoying. I'm going to cash in this corpse. Keep the money for yourself, Kakuzu. Yeah, the other members of Akatsuki don't need to know about this. It's our little secret. It is. We have plans for the boy, and Pain doesn't need to know. Not to mention what Orochimaru would do. Ever since Itachi ended the Uchiha bloodline, he has shown a great interest in the bloodlines of old. He might even find out a secret or two. But it will be futile in the end. We trust you, Kakuzu, because you only trust in money and don't care about anything else. We can always locate new prey for you, as long as we can feed on the worthless casualties like the black hair and that pinky. Kakuzu grumbled something under his breath, about the foul-eating habits that the plant-like shinobi displayed. It wasn't that he really cared about what happened to the boy and the girl. They were unnecessary, not worth a single ryo, and Zetsu only wanted the blonde boy. Leaving his unsavory companion to his dinner, Kakuzu stalked off to the nearest bounty station. 50 million ryo was waiting to be collected, after all. Zetsu truly had his uses. Bounty hunting had never gone as smoothly. A spiral-patterned white man rose from the ground, eerily similar to the way Zetsu had traveled through the earth and roots. Of course, Tobi was just another manifestation grown from the Geto Mazo, demonic statue of the outer path. Originally human, he had been a victim of the infinite Tsukuyami, absorbed into the Shinju, god tree, just like white Zetsu. Stored within the Geto Mazo, Tobi had remained dormant and forgotten for centuries, trapped within the moon along with the statue. That is, until Uchiha Madara awoke the Rinnegan and summoned the statue. He was the one who had freed Tobi from his centuries of slumber, enabling him to grow a body from the wood-like tissue of the Geto Mazo. Well, Madara had foolishly believed that they had been grown from the tissue of Senju Hashirama, the Shodaime Hokage, but that had been a lie. In truth, Tobi was compelled to be loyal to only one entity. Captured and mutated due to her actions, Tobi was loyal to the will which Akatsuki Kaguya had left behind. Her son, of sorts, Black Zetsu, was the one who secretly commanded all the beings grown from the statue. But they lacked the power to resurrect Kaguya on their own, which led to them submitting themselves, even if it was under false pretenses, to the will of someone far stronger. Madara had been the first human who had reached a level that approached the perfection of Kaguya. He was the first to strive for power to such a degree that he almost retraced it to its origin. He had even understood the necessity of Hashirama's chakra and tissue, which had led him to the Rinnegan. But it had been too late for the man. Too old, too feeble, he had only prolonged his life by leeching off the Geto Mazo. He was pathetic. Too pathetic for the plans of Black Zetsu, which was why they had manipulated Madara into giving the Rinnegan to a boy who had inherited the blood of the younger son, hoping that he would prove to be easier to manipulate. Unfortunately, that had proven a mistake. Much like Ashura himself, Nagato was too deluded by the notion of love. Even though loss eventually twisted his love into something darker, Nagato had turned out to be too difficult to control. As such, Zetsu had been happy when they had stumbled upon a nearly dead Uchiha boy. Taking him in, Tobi had enveloped the boy, slowly turning him into something greater. They needed a champion. The death of Madara, now devoid of his Rinnegan, was merely a matter of time. The boy's Sharingan had already evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan, granting him the useful abilities of intangibility and what was effectively teleportation. All had seemed to go according to plan, until Itachi happened. Removing the Uchiha clan had mostly been a desire of Uchiha Obito, the boy that Zetsu had found. But it was also Zetsu's wish that Konoha was weakened. It was easier to operate without being detected during times of war. After all, what had driven the boy to do it was something Zetsu had never discovered. But somewhere along the line, Itachi had snapped. Perhaps it was murdering his parents, perhaps it was the death of his girlfriend, or perhaps his little brother. Zetsu didn't know, didn't really care either. All that mattered was that Itachi had taken Obito out of the game. Whatever the sealing technique with that spectral blade had been, not even Obito was able to escape it. Obito, who even had managed to escape the Yondaime Hokage, was gone. Black Zetsu had spent centuries manipulating the Uchiha, and one boy had undone all those efforts. The bloodline had ended. The only remnants of the entire clan were the few eyes that remained. Zetsu knew that Orochimaru had a few of them, and Hatake Kakashi had also possessed one. But it wasn't enough. A few eyes weren't enough to recreate the bloodline. The eyes, without the bodies, were flawed. The death of Obito had also meant the death of Tobi, who had merged with the wounded body of the Uchiha. Regrowing Tobi from the Geto Mazo had been a laborious task, due to Zetsu's limited chakra reserves, but it had eventually been done. The new Tobi entirely lacked any memories from the old one, but at least he had the same abilities. Tobi, you're late. I sent a clone but couldn't find him right away. What's up? The fully white Tobi exclaimed. If possible, this Tobi was an even greater fool than the old one, a fact which Black Zetsu often reiterated to him. The spiral pattern that stretched all over his body gave Tobi a completely different appearance from the plant-like Zetsu. The fact that Tobi was literally hollow, perhaps explaining his lack of intelligence, was also unique. While Zetsu was akin to a flytrap that could consume flesh, Tobi was created to encase a human and to sustain it. Quit fooling around. The boy is only barely alive. Even that odd chakra is running out. He's a Jinchuriki, you idiot. Oh, so that's why he's still alive? What other reason could there be? Kakuzu practically cut him in two. His legs are gone, and his torso is damaged to a degree where no normal human would remain alive for more than a minute. We should thank our old friend, the Kyuubi. I thought the Kyuubi hated you. Tobi tilted his head as a way to show his surprise. I was being sarcastic, airhead. Yeah, the Kyuubi always despised Mother. He was way too loyal to her son. He is one of Hagoromo's creations. And we were created by Mother. Should I, merge with him? What other reason could there be for me to call you here? Perhaps you miss me? Tobi seemed to seriously consider the question, ignoring the deadpan expression on Zetsu. His inability to understand Black Zetsu's sarcasm was rather appalling. Or perhaps you found me a dinner? You know I don't eat flesh like you do, but a nice. You're an idiot. That even you have the right to say it is rather telling of how dumb Tobi is. Hey! Why are you always picking on me? Because you're only slightly less of an idiot than Tobi. Quit stalling, envelop the boy. Okie dokie, boss man, yes. Black Zetsu had nearly lost all hope. Without the Uchiha, his schemes seemed to turn into failure. Wandering aimlessly, he had witnessed a battle of two Jinchuriki. While he had only gone to Konoha to see how Orochimaru's little scheme to invade Konoha would turn out, it was hilarious to see how Orochimaru had lost his arms. Zetsu had found a strange boy. Or rather, a boy who made him literally feel strange. As if his genetic composition responded to the boy's chakra. Such overwhelming yang chakra. It was best alternative that Zetsu had. Tobi swallowed the body of the near-dead Jinchuriki. Uzumaki Naruto, Zetsu recalled, had been the boy's name. Why he lived within the confines of another clan was something he hadn't figured out, nor why he wore the Yamanaka symbol. Uzumaki usually had red hair, while Naruto was blonde. Perhaps he was part Yamanaka, or perhaps he lived among the Yamanaka in order for the boy to remain unnoticed. His spiky hair was quite unlike the smooth-haired Yamanaka, but at least the color was right. Tobi opened up, encasing the boy. His white tissue immediately began to grow and contort, stopping the boy from bleeding dry. Like ivy growing into a stone wall, Tobi's plant-like tissue invaded Naruto's flesh. Zetsu had seen it before, although in a different matter. Obito had struggled to control the tissue which Zetsu had given him, after the boy had lost half his body, being crushed underneath the immeasurable weight of stone. Where Obito had seemed to struggle, almost rejecting the tissues, Naruto seemed to greedily absorb it. So much yang energy, Tobi's flesh is responding immediately. Is this why the boy is so interesting? Just wait and see. Tobi will soon lose the struggle. Lose? What do you mean? You feel the same sensation from the boy's chakra, right? Imagine how Tobi must feel. So much vitality. Poor Tobi. Black Zetsu couldn't find any pity for Tobi. He had been bred for this task. While Zetsu was able to create as many clones as his chakra tolerated, and had many techniques that specialized in espionage, Tobi was different. Tobi could not create clones. Instead, Tobi had resonated most of all with Hashirama's tissue. It had been an extremely bad day for Kurama. One almost equaling the day he had been split in half, to be sealed within the son of the woman he had been sealed in previously. That very child was on the border of life and death, and Kurama had to exert himself to keep the boy alive. The death of the boy would, after all, imply that he died as well, and the Kyuubi had no desire for death, not the least because he did not know what would happen if he died. It was not that a Bijou could actually die, not by the mortal sense of the word. His body could be destroyed, yes, which was as close to death as the Kyuubi could get. What was more worrisome was that he had lost his Yin half when he was sealed within Naruto. While only having Yang energy, Kurama doubted that he could recreate his body. Yang could breathe life into form, but Yin was needed to create form. Stupid brat. The enormous fox howled. The light within his prison was slowly dimming, at the same rate as the vigor was slipping out of the boy, and then suddenly, everything changed. Plants, roots from mighty trees, grew through the sewer that led towards Kurama's prison. The walls were slowly being covered, the ground, normally covered with water, dried up as the foliage soaked it up. A foreign chakra invaded Naruto's body, merging with it, and the remnants of Naruto's chakra responded. Not that he could be blamed for not trying to stop it. Whatever happened to the boy, it was bad news. The man who had attacked them, who had killed the teacher and the kunoichi, and left Naruto for dead, had obviously acted on orders of something else. Kurama cursed the fact that Naruto's sight had failed when he completely lost consciousness. A blur of black and white was the last thing Kurama had seen through Naruto's nearly closed eyes. It was bad news indeed. Whatever it was, if the boy was completely taken over, then Kurama would be at their mercy, which was utterly unacceptable. So when the foreign chakra reached out for the boy's unconscious form, which had been resting right in front of Kurama's prison, the mighty nine-tailed fox lashed out with his claw. The pull of the foreign chakra increased, but Kurama didn't relent. The boy might be an insufferable miscreant, but he at least left Kurama alone, and whoever it was that tried to take over the boy's body would undoubtedly be worse. The opposing powers struggled for dominance, with Kurama severely handicapped due to the restrictions which the seal imposed on him. Regardless, Kurama was mighty enough to match the power of foreign chakra. It had the same odd quality which reminded Kurama of Senju Hashirama and his Mokuton, but this form of the wood release was incomparably weaker. Naruto's ego was left dangling between the two powers. Unable to endure, it ripped asunder. In a moment of desperation, Kurama forced all his chakra through the seal. The might of the fox had been cut in half by Namake's Minato, but ironically, it was only the yang energy that Kurama needed right now. The foreign chakra couldn't handle it, and transformed. The result was a genetic rewrite which Kurama couldn't stop. The boy and the invader became one, except for the part of the boy which Kurama still held in his claws. With the ego of the boy torn asunder, Kurama knew he had to act quickly. That shattered part of the boy's entity was perfect to close off the seal. Whatever the other half of the boy had become, it would not be able to reach Kurama, not without Kurama's permission, at least. Zetsu, both halves, continued watching how Tobi merged with the boy. Does this kill Tobi? The boy is nearly dead. Tobi should be the dominant personality. The boy's yang chakra will only help him gain more power. Tobi's Mokuton would be drastically improved. Why is Mokuton so important? Black Zetsu sighed, annoyed by the ignorance of his whiter half. Mother's remains, the statue, are composed of wood. So if we can have a proper Uchiha to control the statue until Mother returns, what would be better than someone with the Mokuton Kekei Genkai? Oh, so Tobi is going to turn into Super Tobi. But why? We've got Nagato for that, right? Josetsu, you are a moron. Black Zetsu reminded him of his nickname Chatterbox. Pointless chatter was what seemed to define White Zetsu. He'd rather talk than think, unlike his blacker half. Nagato doesn't trust us, and I don't trust him. Nagato dreams of peace, and why would we tell him about our real goals? All we need is a vessel to control the Jubi, until we can resurrect the Shinju. And once that happens, Mom will be happy to be back. Hush. Tobi is waking up. His chakra just now, it was huge. Yes, it definitely was. Will it be the same old Tobi? It should be. Our loyal yet strong puppet. Blue eyes fluttered, the swirling mask of Tobi leaving the boy's head free. Tobi. How do you feel? Who? The boy muttered after a pause, seemingly surprised by the question. Tobi's flesh kept shrinking, merging with Naruto's body to a greater degree than Zetsu, both black and white, had anticipated. This was nothing like what they had seen with Obito. Stop kidding around, Tobi, Black Zetsu growled. Pain. The entire body was permeating with a pain that blinded him, that replaced his every thought. Something from outside penetrated his flesh, changing him. Something from within answered, burning and churning, also changing him. He jumbled in between, forgetting who or what he was. A power that was innately his emerged, somehow soothing his pain, comforting him. It replaced the outside force, and subdued the fire from within him. It ended the struggle. Yet at what cost? A gasp escaped his lips, suddenly aware of the necessity of oxygen. The entire world swirled and shifted, opening up in a way that was foreign to him, and yet. I see without eyes. I see the roots of the trees. I see the leaves. I see the vines. I sense everything. And yet I am blind, Tobi. A voice spoke to him, it sounded rather flippant, as if they knew each other. How do you feel? A second, rougher voice followed after the other, seamlessly. The first was friendly enough, but the other scared him. He somehow felt like he had to listen to it. But when he considered why, he decided to dismiss the feeling. Who? He muttered. Was he Tobi? No, he didn't feel like the name was familiar. The name felt completely foreign, but he couldn't recall who he really was. A vexing thought encroached upon him, the idea that it was so close, he was about to say it, but the knowledge just kept slipping away. The moment he thought that he remembered it, he forgot again. Stop fooling around, Tobi, the ill-tempered voice again. The boy tried to move, but that was about as impossible as remembering. The smell of freshly served ramen made him drool, the warmth of a blonde comforted him, but that was just about everything he knew. There were vague impressions, including of his legs, which currently felt wrong. He didn't know why his legs were wrong, but he just knew. Not knowing why only led to more frustration. Or was it that sense of anger and loss that suddenly boiled up for no reason? Again, he tried to move. Whether he was Tobi or not, he didn't know. But he did want to get up and see what was going on. His legs felt soft like warm butter. His stomach felt odd as well, as if every organ was still rearranging itself. It didn't feel painful, it was just, well, the only impression he knew that could be compared to it was an itch. He tried to lift his arm, and instead his messed up senses extended to something outside his body. Why is he manipulating that tree? The friendlier voice asked in surprise. He'll need time to adjust. The other growled. The strange thing, now that he considered it, was that there were two voices, while he only sensed one body. Realizing he could sense the other, he turned his attention to himself. His body was different from how he remembered, somehow. The vague impressions that he had from the time before waking up told him that something had changed. Who am I? He questioned aloud. He seems to have forgotten. Yes, he remembers nothing. Pitiful. Should we bring him home? He will be needing time to adjust to the changes. Is he Tobi or Naruto? Naruto? The nameless boy liked the sound of that name better than Tobi. Naruto gave him impressions of mischief, orange, and something else. The frustration grew, and with it his chakra spiked. Flowers sprouted from their bulbs, bloomed, and perished. Trees shed their leaves and grew new ones. Acorns erupted into small trees. In a matter of seconds, the boy's chakra overflowed the nearby nature. The worst aspect was that Zetsu had to struggle not to lose his own cohesion, as if he too was erupting into a tree. White Zetsu was especially suffering. We're lucky he passed out, Black Zetsu mumbled, looking down on the exhausted boy. Mokuton. When I witnessed him engage the Uchiha, I knew he could have the potential, with the overwhelming yang energy he has. When he used the Kyuubi's chakra, it was as if he was overflowing with life. Yet I never anticipated him to change so fundamentally. So even you don't know everything. Only Mother does. Senju Tsunade regretted the day she had allowed that little blonde brat to convince her to go back home. Paperwork was bad, politics were worse, but the absolute worst was when she had sent people on missions and they didn't return. It was over a week, and still no one had heard a thing of Hatake Kakashi and his team. Even Danzo had sworn ignorance of where they were, despite admitting that Sai, one of the genin of Team 7, was one of his operatives. Keeping an eye on the Jinchuriki of Konoha was something that stood high on the man's agenda. Losing the young Uzumaki would be a harsh blow for the village, but Tsunade couldn't care all that much about the village right now. Every day that had passed had increased the sense of dread that filled her heart. I made a mistake. I should never have given him that necklace. It is cursed. Hurry back home, brat. But Naruto never listened. Sure, he was the second most flippant subordinate that Tsunade had, only surpassed by the boy's godfather. But she cared too much about the boy to ever punish him for his lack of respect. No other shinobi would leave her office without at least a broken bone or two if he called her Bachan. But he could. Perhaps it was because he resembled Nawaki so much? Nawaki. The mere thought of her younger brother made her afraid. Day after day passed, but no message from Karachi came. No smiling blonde brat barged into her office, unannounced. No disruptions arose within the village due to one of his successful pranks. It gave her a fearful premonition. In a way, Tsunade was thankful that there still was so much for her to do. The invasion of the combined forces of Otogekure and Tsunagekure had left deep scars in Konoha, and as the Hokage she was the one who had to undo much of the damage that her former teammate had caused. But even thinking about the invasion often made her thoughts wander off to Naruto, as he had been the one who stopped Suna's Jinchuriki. Sabaku no Gaara had returned to Suna, and had truly had a change of heart, to the degree that he had practically scared the elders of his village into surrendering. It ended the foolish conflict that had been started only due to Orochimaru's schemes. Reparations, concessions, and renegotiating the peace treaty were things that would never have gone as smoothly as they did without Gaara's influence. Tsunade hoped that the boy, who was likely the strongest shinobi of Tsunagekure, would end up being the next Kazekage. At least he had good intentions towards Konoha. Yes, and when I resign and hand my position to Naruto, he'd have the perfect ally in Gaara. Naruto, Naruto, Naruto. Tsunade wondered how he had wiggled his way into her heart so easily. She, who had distanced herself from practically everyone except Shizen and the pet piglet Tonton, had never thought that she could be swayed so easily, especially not after Dan, her lover, had perished. She had seen his life slip through her hands, just like she had been powerless to do anything to avert Nawaki's death, the most famous healer in the world. Bah, I've done nothing but fail the people I cared most about. It makes me wonder what kind of idiot ever thought that I was fit for this position. Naruto had. Tired and frustrated, Tsunade took the usual way out. Perhaps she would find some solace in that bottle of sake, or one of the others. Somewhere along the line, she had been so drunk that she had fallen asleep, head down on the desk, drooling over all kinds of important documents. Her head felt like it was splitting, the hangover had already set in, and when she saw the cautious first rays of the morning sun, Tsunade wondered why she had woken up. Sleeping was much better. So, she tried to close her eyes again, doing her best to ignore her headache and her churning stomach. Tsunade. Something in his voice made her thoughts of sleep vanish. She shivered, and spurred open her eyes. Jiraiya? He didn't answer immediately, but something in his eyes, before he had quickly averted his eyes, had filled her with fear. He wasn't looking away because she was dressed indecently, which she was, considering how her blouse had sagged open a little during her little dive into the sake reserves, but there was something else. Her intoxicated brain had some trouble recognizing that voice of his, that expression she had seen before, when he told her. No, she whispered. No, don't tell me he is. He gently laid a necklace on her desk, the crystal gem still partially covered in a dried-up clot of blood and mud. His voice broke, and she could hear the tears he had shed. It's all I found, Haim. It can't, not him, not that brat. He swore to me, he swore he'd never, not before he would be Hokage, she whimpered. Someone cashed in the bounty on Hatake Kakashi, Jiraiya whispered, and laid down a scroll in which the man's body rested. Jiraiya didn't want to tell how many throats he had cut to get his hands on the body, nor was Tsunade willing to ask. In fact, she wished he hadn't told her. She didn't want him to say it, that Naruto died. She almost hated him for bringing the news. I retraced where it happened. He put down 2 more scrolls. I found the remains of Haruno Sakura and Sai. And blood, some parts of, so much blood the toads, his name vanished from the contract. She had no idea when she left her chair, but suddenly she realized he had grabbed Jiraiya by the hem of his shirt, lifting the tall man from the ground with just a single hand. You're lying, she could hear the desperation in her own voice, making her wonder why she acted like this. It was the risk of their profession, it was what happened to all who wore that accursed necklace. It's not true. I order you to, order him not to. I won't. She broke down in tears, only held up by Jiraiya's gentle embrace. Vaguely she heard as the man lost his restraint as well. She knew how he had cared about Minato, how it had devastated him that Minato had died, and now the man's son, his own godson, had perished. He was even closer to the boy than she ever was, and yet here she was, the mighty Hokage who was bawling her eyes out, only remaining on her feet because a man who was hurting even more had the strength to keep her up. It's not fair, she repeated several times. It can't be Naruto. But no matter how she wished that Jiraiya told her that it wasn't true, he remained silent. The boy woke up again. His body had been broken and restored, but his new tissue had not been his own, at least, not originally. What once had been the frivolous entity known as Tobi was now completely merged with Naruto. However, the current Naruto was not much like the Naruto Uzumaki he had been before his presumed death. The current Naruto could not remember that Naruto. No, all that this Naruto knew were basic things. He had some skills but lacked the memories of how he got them. He knew the words, but had forgotten the people who taught them to him. It was an infuriating situation, only worsened by his lack of mobility. He had to learn how to control his legs, how to move his arms, how to flex any muscle in his body. It made him wonder how much of his body had been destroyed, but when he asked, Zetsu had only vaguely answered. Considering the color of his skin, Naruto assumed he lost both his legs and at least one of his arms. Much of his torso was now made out of that white goo as well. What once was Tobi was now his tissue, but it was remarkably hard to control. Other things complicated Naruto's situation even more. Zetsu had been forced to move Naruto to an underground cave, too cold to be filled with vegetation. The problem was that Naruto somehow could not make the distinction between his own body and everything around him. When he tried to move a finger, a nearby tree could randomly move its branches, or if he tried to stand up, vines erupted from the ground. It was too confusing for the boy, which had forced Zetsu to move him to a place where there was less greenery. Surrounded by solid rock, Naruto finally made progress. Moving, instinctively solidifying the parts of his body which had once been Tobi, every little step of progress was only accomplished through hard work. The second step of his progress was gaining control of his newfound Kekkei Genkai. Through Tobi, who had inherited the ability either from the Gedo Mazo, or through the cloned tissue of Senju Hashirama, Naruto was genetically altered to the degree that he could influence all plants. Influence was the right word at this point because Naruto still had a long way to go before he would be able to claim that he could control anything. Seems like you're getting faster. He's still too slow. It's rude to ignore us. Let him, he should be focusing on his training. But shouldn't he be looking forward to the news we have? What news? Naruto sighed. He knew that Zetsu wouldn't stop annoying him until he told Naruto what he wanted. Zetsu was the only person, if he could be considered as such, who visited Naruto in this lone cave. And yet, for some reason, Naruto mostly felt annoyed by the plant-like shinobi. We found you a teacher. One who had first-hand experience on dealing with your Kekkei Genkai. Yes, because we don't know how to use it properly. We lack the necessary vitality and chakra, Black Zetsu finished. Besides, you need to learn how to do more than just Mokuton. Other skills are useful too, like Suiton or Doton, but fire and wind too. Not too big a fan of lightning though. It tends to give me a splitting headache. Stop whining, it was just a clone that died. But he didn't have to be so uptight. It is your fault for pointing him to that bounty. Or his own fault for not being quick enough. How could we know that someone else was after that idiot as well? You're giving me a headache, Naruto grumbled. As usual, I'd add. Who is this teacher? And does it mean that I can get out of here? Being restricted to this little valley after you finally let me out of that cave is starting to bore me. Kakuzu should be here soon. White Zetsu gave the boy a thumbs up. He is not a patient man, so make sure to watch your step. Or you'll die. Stupid piece of mutated lettuce, Naruto growled after the Zetsu duo sank into the ground. Ever since his release from that empty cave, where he had been fully reliant on Zetsu for food and water, Naruto had seen the moon grow full twice. Still he lived in an awkward shed, an amalgamation of several trees, which, as a testament to his shoddy control, almost looked like it had randomly formed a shelter. Zetsu came and went according to his own wishes, seemingly taking pleasure in Naruto's growing frustrations. Now that the boy could move around, the torment of not knowing had only grown worse. That which had once been Tobi had merged with the boy, acting as a catalyst for the boy's young chakra to affect the nature surrounding him. While the Kyuubi had somehow closed off the seal, with only a bare minimum of chakra leaking out, Naruto had spent his first 13 years while basking in the creature's chakra. Luckily, Zetsu believed that it was Naruto's Mokuton that was suppressing the Kyuubi, or he might have grown suspicious, Black Zetsu, at least. His wider half was too stupid to ever notice it. With Zetsu gone, all that was left for Naruto was patience. Days were wasted on waiting, until Naruto felt someone enter his forest. In this vicinity, Naruto felt everything through the roots and bark of the very trees surrounding him. Then again, the one who entered the forest of this hidden valley had simply too much chakra to not notice. Much to his frustration, Naruto once again felt something gnawing at his memories. Something about this situation was familiar, but what? Perhaps I've met this Kakuzu before? Naruto sighed. Oh well, he can't be worse than that creepy piece of shit crop of lettuce, can he? But why does his chakra make me feel such anger? Chapter 2, Hunters. Naruto had been wrong, very, very wrong. Zetsu was annoying, yes, but at least the scumbag wasn't trying to kill him. Kakuzu, on the other hand, was ready to rip his heart out at the first opportunity he felt annoyed by the young Mokuton user. If he was honest, Naruto had no clue about how he had survived the first months. Contrary to what Zetsu had told him, Kakuzu wasn't much of a teacher. His lessons were a matter of trial and error, where errors translated into severe injury, and to any normal person, death. He couldn't count the times where he had narrowly escaped death, so Naruto tried his best to avoid errors. Kakuzu at least gave him plenty of motivation for that. It was a harsh method, but one that paid off. When Kakuzu wasn't around, as he was continuing his bounty hunting and had deemed Naruto too weak to tag along, White Zetsu would visit and provide all kinds of scrolls and books. Naruto soon discovered that he could easily learn Suiton Jutsu. Similarly, he also learned the weaker Doton and Futon Jutsu quite quickly. Kakuzu had mastered every element, although Mokuton was something only Naruto could do. Theory was provided by Zetsu, practice taught by Kakuzu, and Naruto worked non-stop to earn his survival because the further he progressed, the harder Kakuzu tried to murder him. The price of failure was, after all, not something that Naruto wanted to pay. He hated his situation, but knew no alternative. He didn't remember anything from prior to meeting Zetsu, and was too weak to escape on his own. Kakuzu easily overpowered his every move, and Zetsu, well, there was no escaping from them. It was not as if Naruto didn't hate the sewed-together man enough as it was, and he didn't even know why. Kakuzu had merely laughed when Naruto asked, mumbling something about hoping Naruto would never remember. It was roughly a year since Naruto's waking up when Kakuzu deemed him ready to join him on the road. Up until that point, Naruto had remained in a hideout or camping somewhere in the wilds, whenever Kakuzu set out for a bounty. Those were the moments when Naruto could recover from Kakuzu's cruel training methods. Wipe that blood from your face, Kakuzu had grumbled at Naruto after their one-sided beating, had ended. I have wasted enough time on you. It's time you earn your own weight, if you think I can do it. Either that or you'll die. I don't care. I bet I could still fetch plenty of money for your Littlewood release. Geez, I feel so reassured now, Naruto muttered. Kakuzu ignored him, instead unsealing and throwing a black cloak at the 14-year-old. Thanks, I suppose? Just make sure you don't get recognized by Konoha scum. Why, you want to have an entire village after you? What did I do to earn that? Naruto blinked before his mind caught up with his words. Mokuton. Kakuzu only nodded before he walked away. Naruto was forced to quickly gather all his belongings, seal them away in a storage scroll, and run after his sensei. Sensei, a title which Zetsu had mockingly used to describe Kakuzu. Naruto never called him that though. The only thing which Naruto wanted was to make them pay for the way he had been treated. He wanted to know why he felt such hatred against Kakuzu, before he tore the man to shreds. It seems like Naruto-kun grew up these last months. Yes, his strength has grown considerably. Back to Nag? Naruto scowled. The old geezer just had me wipe out an entire village of bandits, while he takes the money. He's collecting the bounties right now, making me wait outside. Greedy bastard. That's Kakuzu. He's like that. But his skill is probably the only thing surpassing his greed. And he's hard to kill. What gave you the idea that he'd be a good instructor for me? Nothing. But with his experience against the Shodaime Hokage, he would at least survive when you'd go mad. Your nightmares are quite scary. Scary indeed. Such confidence. Naruto shook his head in disbelief. Does everyone in the world hate my guts? When you're sad and alone, the only one you can count on is yourself. As if that wasn't obvious already, Naruto rolled his eyes. Ever since I first met you, all people have ever tried to do to me is kill me. Hell, I bet that even before I woke up someone tried to kill me. That asshole took away my damn memories. Could it have been Kakuzu? But we saved you. Tobi did. Yeah, you acquired a useful tool. The longer Naruto spoke, the further his anger rose. The earth trembled slightly as the boy's chakra coursed through it. The trees withered, the foliage parched away, all life seemed to be sapped away. The boy's chakra spiked, and for a moment Zetsu was worried for his own life. Lives, if one was counting the black and white half as separate entities. Before Naruto could spiral further out of control, the wall of the nearby building exploded outward. A monstrous being that was surrounded by long black threads, with 3 masks that had their mouths wide open and released. Zetsu coughed. The explosion that had followed had kicked up quite some dust. Kakuzu, you idiot! You could have killed him, but I did not, Kakuzu drawled. I've dealt with those outbursts before. They're best stopped before he really loses it. I'm sure you heard what happened when we were near Ishigekure. That was fun. It was not funny, you fool. He could have been discovered. Yeah. It would be a pain if Konoha found him. How are his memories? The brat doesn't remember a thing of his former life. You did cause enough injury to leave him permanently traumatized. Or has he gone insane due to Tobi? Something bad happened back then, remember? Of course I remember. Messing around with Jinchuriki like this is asking for trouble, Kakuzu remarked dismissively. I still don't see the point of keeping the brat's condition a secret from the others. Just be glad that his Mokuton is suppressing the beast to the point where it can't be noticed. The only problems we have are these damn outbursts. Seems like he still needs more time then. Bye. The brat is right, Kakuzu growled. Zetsu had vanished into the ground again. Stupid plant. Mutated crop of lettuce. Naruto mumbled a few minutes after Zetsu left. The young blonde shakily climbed out of the crater which Kakuzu had created with his attack. Stupid old man, wasn't that a little excessive? Just follow and keep your mouth shut. Defecting had once seemed like a good idea. No more orders, no more stupid superiors ordering her around. No missions that only led her to risk her life for a village full of self-righteous idiots. There was only so much that she was willing to take, and the missions out in the field weren't even the worst thing. No, the torture and interrogation aspect, which her clan was renowned for, was what she hated most. A hidden village exerted power at the cost of the weak. The smaller nations which were stuck between the 5 large ones were always the first to end up screwed. The top of a hidden village declared someone as an enemy. A nice story was fabricated, depicting the evil deeds of someone. It was all such bogus. Some men became bandits, just because they were too poor to feed their families through other means. People resorting to violence because their farmlands were destroyed time after time by shinobi battles, could they really be called evil? And yet, the village issued a mission: capture or kill. Killing was relatively merciful. A captured villain ended up with her, and she had to discern the villain from the victim. It was not a problem if it happened once or twice, but after a decade, she had grown tired. So terribly tired. This last year of freedom had been more fulfilling than her 15-year career as a kunoichi. The peace and quiet was a blessing to her wounded soul. She even had thought of settling down. There was one man in one of the nearby civilian villages who always treated her nicely. He seemed to be aware of her kunoichi status, and that no official shinobi would be lingering in the area for that long a time, but he did not seem to care that much. He cared about her. Having forsaken her family name, she only went through life as Kaomi. A young woman, only 27 years old, blonde and slender, she could be considered attractive, but not overly so. Her cheerful attitude had once made up for a lot, giving her an upbeat personality which had been appreciated by her shinobi peers. Not that she was that popular, but it was enough to attract some of the good-looking guys. But there were only so many fun adventures, and they only acted as temporary distractions from the daily reality. She had just grown tired of it all and left. She should have known it wouldn't end well. Hunter Neen would eventually track her down. She had known that when she made her choice, but after a year she had started to hope. There is no escape, a young male drawled, completely indifferent. She felt the chakra he radiated. It was so alien that she had not even considered escaping just yet. Blonde spiky hair, and cold blue eyes, but otherwise he was nearly completely hidden by the high-collared black robe. He was just a boy, and she was an experienced chunin, yet she knew. I know, Kaomi sighed. So Konoha finally sent someone? I guess I wasn't a priority, if it took them so long. I don't care about Konoha. The boy walked up to her, his pace calm and deliberate. I am here for the bounty on your head. A bounty hunter? She blinked. How could a child, no more than 14 or 15 years old, be a bounty hunter of this caliber? She could have understood his power if he was part of some important shinobi clan, but bounty hunters were usually the scum of society. Alive or dead, the amount of money is the same. Kaomi shuddered at his cold and indifferent voice. She had seen so many prisoners that the mere sound of a voice was enough for her to notice the difference. This wasn't someone who would show pity. This wasn't just some sad victim, only reluctantly resorting to a life of crime, just for the sake of survival. This was the voice of someone who would kill and not sleep a second less the night after. Still, indifferent people were easier to persuade than those who were loyal to a cause. They were selfish, only caring for money or, I don't have any money, but I can offer you other forms of payment. Kaomi hated herself, but it was the only chance she had left. He remained silent, and she saw it as a yes. Slowly, she unbuttoned her shirt, showing her chest. She knew it wasn't much, but she had enough to make a boy his age drool. Teenage hormones could be useful, for a change. She felt disgusted, but he was too strong for her to beat him in a fight. This was the only way left to survive this situation, the only chance she had to remain free. What are you doing? I can't offer money, but I'll do whatever you want me to do, if you let me go. She gathered her resolve and acted as sultry as she could. She loosed her long blonde hair and dropped her green shirt. The chilly temperatures caused her nipples to harden. Goosebumps spread over her skin. While she didn't really want to give off the message that she truly desired him, the logical part of her mind accepted that it might be more attractive to him. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, and she used her arms to push her breasts together. You can have my body for a night, she tried, hoping she didn't sound too desperate. His silence was unnerving her. Kaomi started to untie her sash, and moved to lower her outworn black pants, turning away from him to give him a little show. Perhaps, if she looked away, this would be less humiliating, but at least she'd survive, humiliated or not. She felt something on her back. And everything went dark. Breathe in. The smells, of pollen in the air, of grass, green and growing, of flowers, budding and vibrant, of trees, enduring and nourishing. The smells of nature entered his nose. He processed it, absorbed the knowledge of his surroundings. It calmed him. The world of green was so much more calming than the world of flesh. Breathe out. He felt the roots underneath the ground on which he sat. He felt how they gathered the nutrients for the trees that sent them so deep into the earth. There was the eternal thirst for water, only matched for the greed for sunlight. The roots converged into the trunk branched out, the branches ended in leaves, and he went back again, back to the earth, back to the next tree. Breathe in. A rabbit was digging a hole, only a few dozens of feet away from this place. He was carefree, only concerned with reproduction, aiming to lure a mate and start a new warren. At a greater distance, a fox was scurrying around, nose to the ground, tracking the scent of its prey. A couple of cubs were waiting for the vixen to bring back food, the cycle of life. Breathe out. Yes, vegetation was eaten by herbivores, herbivores were eaten by carnivores, and the corpses and other excrements all provided nutrition for new vegetation. Oxygen converted to carbon dioxide converted to oxygen. Nature was balanced. All things happened for a reason. Breathe in. But why was it so difficult for an individual to understand his reason? Were the things he did part of this world, just like a fox hunting a rabbit? Was he some kind of alpha predator, who could hunt and kill whomever he wanted, and was that his role in the cyclical nature of the world? Breathe out. People got bounties. Bounties got hunters. Hunters got money. Was that his cycle? Was that his purpose? It felt so empty. He knew he was supposed to be more than this, that he was meant to achieve something big. He was not just a continuation of their world, but a force that had changed it. Perhaps that was the old Naruto, never giving up on his goal, no matter the odds, but the new him had forgotten his original purpose. Breathe in. The new Naruto caught the smell of the corpse behind him, and the one that was approaching, slung over the shoulder of the man who was supposed to be his teacher or mentor. Kakuzu had taken his time, which was unusual. Normally, Naruto was the one who ended up getting chewed out for wasting Kakuzu's time, and time was money, Kakuzu argued. If money was a religion, wasting it was a heretical act for which Kakuzu, Archbishop of the Church of Ryo, would gladly condemn anyone to a penniless afterlife. Breathing exercises are futile. Still, why did that stupid woman unnerve me so much? Yamanaka Kayomi, formerly a chunin of Konohagakure. Why did her name attract my attention? Why did I pick her bounty when Kakuzu let me decide which one to hunt? What was worse was that he couldn't get her out of his mind. He'd seen plenty of corpses since he had joined Kakuzu. He had hunted down many bounties by himself too. Or in case Kakuzu just wanted to add a fresh heart. Killing was not something that unnerved him anymore, in contrast to how he felt after his first kill. Naruto had gained experience. He knew what the human body looked like, both outside and in. Desensitized was what Kakuzu called it. But if he didn't feel anything, why did his body experience such arousal when she undressed? Why did a naughty part of his brain consider taking her up on her offer, and screwing her brains out? Sure, she was attractive, apple-sized breasts, with those pretty and hard nipples that just dragged his eyes towards them, and when she lowered her pants, the sight of her bare ass made him feel even worse. I could have taken her, done the stuff from those Ika books which Zetsu gave me, and still killed her after I was done, he speculated, although he knew he wouldn't have done such. It just felt wrong. Terribly wrong. She didn't do it because she wanted it. She did it because she was desperate. Killing someone and cashing in a bounty is one thing, but raping a woman just doesn't feel right. It might have been physically enjoyable while it lasted, but the mere idea sickens me. That part of me considered it sickens me. Ironic, people call me a monster for the job I do, yet I have more for a conscience than those idiots. The hookers in the cities we've passed pretty much offered their bodies for the same reasons as Kayomi did, and the same villagers who see murder as despicable happily exploit the hopeless situations of those young women. Naruto also had to note that it wasn't so much her body that attracted him. It was a weird sense of familiarity that had stopped him from killing her at the spot. His stupefied silence had led her to drawing the wrong conclusion, offering her body to him in exchange for her life, but her life had been worthless to him. Naruto sighed, and looked up at the clouds in the sky. There would be rain soon. Just a few more minutes, and then Kakuzu would be here. Then there was the dropping off of the corpses to the nearest bounty station, and then on to their next targets. Life was rather dull. Perhaps he should ask Kakuzu for someone who posed more of a threat? Idly, he was spinning his right index finger. As his finger twirled, so did a few roots that popped out of the ground. His control had increased drastically ever since Kakuzu had taken him away from that little valley hidden between the mountains. No more creating crappy-looking hovels for him. Naruto could now create a proper little cottage, doors and window openings included, with a mere sequence of hand seals. Perhaps that was why Kakuzu tolerated him better now. Being able to create houses had saved them quite some money at hotels. It didn't mean Naruto felt any different about Kakuzu though. Hell, Kakuzu had even exploited Naruto when they encountered a village which had recently been raided, making Naruto create new houses in return for a good fee. Not that Naruto ever saw more than 10% of the profit, regardless of the fact that he did all the work, and that small percentage was only seen if he was lucky. Kakuzu was an asshole. He turned his head to the corpse of the blonde Yamanaka. Even in death, she reminded him of what she had offered him, yet he knew she wasn't the one he desired. How he knew it was something that he didn't know, but he knew it one of the confusing paradoxes of his stupid life. Breathing exercises didn't help him to calm down, so he just stood up, ordered his roots to lift up the Yamanaka woman. He had dressed her after the vines had pierced her heart, and turned to the waiting Kakuzu. The greedy bastard was already impatient, even when he was the one being late. Easy money, Naruto grunted. Sure, the kill was easy, and the locating wasn't too difficult either. Sensing all life through the nature around him, Naruto never had too much trouble finding his prey. The turmoil which she had caused was something he had not anticipated, but he kept his face emotionless, not willing to show anything to the old bounty hunter. The perfect tool had no emotions, and without emotions he had no weaknesses. Foolish. Without emotions, what reason did he have to fight? He desired to live, to be free. That was what gave him strength, that, and nature itself. Let's go. Fine, Naruto shrugged. I should have picked another target, then she could have lived in peace. She didn't seem too bad a person. Could have made a good wife for someone. Oh well, if she wanted a happy life she should have stayed living in her village, rather than going rogue. Papers fluttered through the air, amalgamating into a single woman. Dressed in a black robe with red clouds, identical to that of Kakuzu, Naruto knew she was part of the same organization. Akatsuki. Next to the blue-haired woman, Zetsu, both black and white, rose from the ground. Seems like there is actually someone who can keep up with you, Lettuce-san. Why are you so mean to us? He looks down on us because you are an idiot. Hey, Conan, Kakuzu grumbled. What are you two doing here? There is a potential recruit, the stoic woman noted, before she dissolved into papers again. Naruto wondered if she had some kind of fetish for piercings. The odd part was that she had an origami flower in her hair. Apparently she loved piercings and paper. He idly noted that she had better curves than that Yamanaka woman, but there is only one spot remaining. Naruto-kun gets a fair chance. But remember that people outside the three of us aren't meant to know your name. Yes, they know you as Kunemori, but the fewer that know the name, the better. Don't mess up, unless you want to die. Seriously, Kakuzu frowned, but remained silent, making Naruto wonder if this was just another ploy they made to get him killed. So I gotta kill someone to join you guys? Who? Why do I always get to kill the blondes? Naruto groaned. And I can't even say whether you're male or female. They sent a kid this time? A blonde man frowned, his slanted blue eyes assessing the threat in front of him. His long blonde hair was drawn into a half ponytail, leaving the rest hanging down freely. He wore a blue and gray kimono jacket with a fishnet undershirt inside, and khaki pants with common sandals and a belt-like pouch with a chain. As he wore a slashed IWA Hittite, Naruto had no doubt that this man, or woman, was Deidara. You're barely older, Naruto retorted. He was 15, and Deidara was a year or two his senior. Deidara glared, but the madness in his eyes did not unnerve Naruto much. He was used to Kakuzu, who was far worse. I wonder why they make me waste my time on some kind of second-rate terrorist. He ignored the irony of starting to sound like Kakuzu. People just don't appreciate the grandeur of my art. A terrorist living in a temple, talking about art. This day just keeps getting worse. Well, at least those statues were interesting. What's next? Do you even want to put up a fight? Naruto sighed. The temple in which he had found Deidara was conveniently hidden amidst a forest, on the border between Tsuchi no Kuni and Kusa's territory, near Takigakure. Deidara probably used this place as a hideout while traveling across the borders and practicing his art of explosions. Why would a brat like you be so eager to die? Do you understand the reality of beauty? Deidara rambled. Naruto hated people who rambled like this. White Zetsu was like this, endlessly talking, especially during the times when Naruto could barely move, just after he woke up from his near death. Seemingly ignoring the pyromaniac, Naruto instead looked at the statues within the temple. The representations of deities and demons looked well cared for by the monks who lived here, although the place seemed rather deserted now. It would be a shame to ruin all this. Deidara, annoyed at getting ignored, rambled something about art just lasting a single moment, art being an explosion, and so on. Naruto couldn't find it in himself to care. Some kind of insect crawled out of the wooden floor, wrapping itself around Naruto. The creature was a construct of clay, infused with a shitload of chakra. So this is the Bakugan they warned me about, Naruto drawled. How boring. It sounded more exciting than this dud. My art is not a dud, Deidara snapped, causing the clay insect to explode at his will. It is the result of combining highly detailed line work and two-dimensional deformations. Why can't anyone see the genius of my work? Why are artists like you always so mentally unstable? Naruto still sounded bored, but his appearance had changed quite a bit. Being merely a Mokubunshin, this Naruto was quite resilient. Deidara had damaged him, though. The clone had lost a leg, and the other leg and the torso were still on fire. What's next? Are you going to cut off your ear? You're not a painter, you know. What are you? When will you ever shut up? The clone sighed. If you win, you must join Akatsuki. If I win, I join. It isn't too difficult to grasp, is it? Although, our match is already decided, so whether you understand or not is irrelevant. Who said I want to join them? My ninjutsu is the very essence of my creativity, and I cannot let myself be restricted. Suit yourself, the clone shrugged before he sank into the wooden floor. A clone, HN? Deidara mumbled to himself. That was pathetic. I let myself be fooled by, wait, a wooden clone. Chakra flared up, with a density that even Deidara, not a censor by nature, could feel it. It was oppressive, ripping apart the wooden floor of the temple, creating tears in the walls. The floor broke apart, and trees emerged from the ground. Tiger. Ram. Snake. I probably have to thank Zetsu for handing me those scrolls on the Shodame's jutsu. Not sure how Zetsu got stuff from this Madara guy. Nor why someone who, rival or not, doesn't have the Kekkei Genkai would spend so much time and effort in analyzing the skills from Hashirama. Mokuton Hijitsu, Jukai Koten, would release secret technique, nativity of a world of trees. It had taken Naruto nearly an entire year, but the technique was well worth it. Augmented by his ever-increasing chakra reserves, he could just let it run wild. Trees emerged, tearing the entire temple apart. Branches of the forest grew over the entire surface. The tiny seeds which had rested in the soil underneath had acted as medium, and Naruto's chakra had turned the grounds into a dense forest. Deidara was overwhelmed, the branches extending at their prey in an instant, binding him, suffocating him. It wasn't exactly like the technique Hashirama used, and far weaker, but it worked for Naruto. It was almost too easy, and then the center of the newly created forest exploded. Oh, so you aren't completely useless? Naruto mocked his opponent. Staggering to stay on his feet, Deidara glared at the younger blonde. Within the forest, Naruto had an overwhelming advantage, and he wasn't inclined to waste more time. Guess you intentionally made those duds of yours so damn ugly. You just wanted people to underestimate you, didn't you? You, how can you? The Mokuton is extinct. Suddenly Deidara's chakra increased at a tremendous rate, and he bloated up like he was. Mokuton, Mokujihiki. Wood release, wood locking wall, wooden pillars rose from the ground before Naruto, bending and interlocking, forming a dome-shaped rampart that shielded him from the explosion that followed. Did that retard seriously cry out art is a blast? The boy mumbled. Guess he's really… Oh, wait. Isn't that just cute? Deidara was forced to escape from the earth. Hiding underneath the ground against someone who could wield the Mokuton Kekkei Genkai was not a wise idea. The roots would always find him down there. So he can create clones from clay too, the younger blonde kept on chuckling. What kind of freak are you? Naya, Naruto waggled his finger, chiding his opponent. Vines grew from the ground, tying Deidara's arms. I know you've got your clay in that pouch. I already wasted enough chakra on you. It is time to end this. Now, why don't you recall those little automated duds you made before I forced you from your hiding place? You're being naive, boy, Deidara laughed. While I have my explosive underneath you, we have a deadlock. You don't get it, do you? Get what? The earth is my domain. Naruto sank into the ground. Deidara tried, but failed to get free. The more he struggled, the tighter the vines squeezed around his arms. His jutsu failed, and his opponent disappeared. So, Naruto startled the terrorist by emerging from the ground behind him. Kakuzu had taught him quite the valuable skill with the Mogirigaku no Jutsu, even when Naruto initially had thought it was just a cowardly way of escape. The jutsu was simple, yet highly useful during combat. Your Kekkei Genkai consists of earth and lightning? Damn it, you kept on rambling like an idiot earlier. At least have some dignity, and let me learn a thing or two. So you're going to torture me for information? Deidara smirked. You won't get anything, you filthy barbarian. Just wait. You can't keep me like this forever. I will turn you into the greatest piece of art I have ever made. Naruto sighed, shook his head, and turned around and walked. As you wish. The vines tightened, stretching Deidara's arms until he groaned from the pain it caused him, and then Naruto turned around. He made a chopping gesture, and a slash of wind chakra descended. He screamed. He swore. He cursed Naruto with all that was unholy, but it didn't change the fact that his arm was cut off. He only ended up being silenced when Naruto repeated the gesture for Deidara's other arm. A vine tore off Deidara's belt, removing the clay from the missing nin, and Naruto grabbed him by the throat, dragging him behind him. It only took Naruto a few minutes before he met Kakuzu, Zetsu, and Konan. A book in one hand, Deidara's unconscious and bleeding form in the other, dragging him over the ground. Konan frowned, seemingly displeased. This idiot is worthless, Naruto grunted. But with his bloodline, I figured you would like his heart. He looked at the pleasantly surprised Kakuzu. Not that Kakuzu would ever show it in any way. Oh, such a generous boy. Can we have the corpse? He's still fresh and juicy. And he was strong. A nice meal. After Kakuzu takes the heart, I'll cut off the head. This moron is worth Rio. The rest is all yours. But be careful, I poisoned him, Naruto warned. The others stared at him. What? You really thought I would whoop his ass this easily if he had been himself? You think I just mindlessly spammed a forest in the hopes of crushing him? It was merely a distraction. The bingo book said he liked playing with fire, so I let him burn all the poisonous bark and sap he wanted, breathing in his own death. Since when did you have that skill? I was saving it for you, old man, Naruto smiled darkly. I told you that I'm going to kill you one day. Yes, he had promised Kakuzu on several occasions to make him pay for all the torture/training, and for whatever the man had done before Naruto had lost his memories. A deep grunt could be heard, a rather foreign sound, and Naruto figured that it was a laugh. Get a good bounty before you try, kid. If you want to fight me seriously, you've got to be worth something first. If I am ever to die, I would only accept my fate if it is at the hands of the strongest shinobi in the world. Greedy and delirious bastard, Naruto shook his head. So, did I pass this dumb test? Konan remained silent, her expression now indecipherable, but tossed a ring at him. Naruto caught it, looking at the teal-colored item. That ring should be worn on your right index finger, Konan said calmly, with only a minor hint of distaste in her voice. Perhaps she was just condescending to others in general, or perhaps it was because she disliked the way the three others shared Deidara's remains. Ao sho, Naruto muttered, reading the kanji for blue and green. Green, kinda fitting considering my ability. She handed him one of the long black cloaks with red clouds, a red interior, and a chin-high collar, which all members of Akatsuki wore. Thanks. I will inform Pain that Kunemori is recruited as the 10th member. Whether it was meant as an acknowledgement, or not was something which Naruto could only guess. The woman once more dissolved in paper, flying away on the winds. Are all members of Akatsuki weirdos? Naruto turned to the remaining two shinobi. Looking at Zetsu, black half scowling and the white half amused, and Kakuzu, Naruto began to chuckle. Forget I asked anything. Haiden is weird, and cannot die. Orochimaru is more snake than human. Kisame is more shark than human, manners included. Sasori is, what is he? Beats me, never saw his real body. We are more plant than human. Konan is relatively normal, but her partner, Pain, is our leader. He is the strongest of Akatsuki. Seriously, don't piss him off, Zetsu warned. And now you have joined. And Kakuzu, don't forget our most grumpy member. That makes 9, Naruto frowned, having counted along. Who is number 10? There are secrets, brat, Kakuzu warned, having finished ripping out Deidara's heart. Ones you don't want to know, especially when our great leader doesn't tell us who it is. Take this brat's head. Keep the Rio. Wow, you're actually letting me keep the bounty of someone I killed for a change? Naruto said mockingly. I'm so honored. I might even cry out of sheer gratitude. Because you won't get the full price with just a head. The bounty only spoke of his head, so they better not refuse to pay. Or they'll find out how it feels to get a tree grown up the ass, Naruto shrugged. There, he used wind chakra to cut off the head. Bon appetit, Zetsu. Thank you. The two bounty hunters left Zetsu to his meal, not really willing to witness the event, with Naruto carrying Deidara's head by his scalp. So, what's the deal with Akatsuki? Other than hunting bounties, of course. War? Kakuzu sounded unusually eager, a sound which actually startled Naruto. They're going to unleash a war upon the world unlike any before. Why would a bounty hunter strive for war? Wars bring more profit than anything else, brat. You'll learn about that eventually, Kakuzu chuckled darkly. If you're around as long as I have been, you will see how enjoyable a time of war can be. Oh well, not like I care. I don't remember anything anyway. Zetsu and I taught you all that you ever need to know, Kakuzu smirked underneath his mask, unseen by Naruto. He knew the irony of the situation, even though he could not claim to know why Zetsu kept the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi a secret like this. But the boy's Mokuton suppressing the demon's presence was quite useful indeed. Let's get to the bounty station. We'll need new targets. What's with the book, though? I took it. It had pretty pictures. The Complete Tale of Kanon and the Southern Seas, Kakuzu read from the cover. A book on deities and demons alike, Naruto shrugged. Found it in the temple. I figured that it would be nice to have something other than Jutsu scrolls to read. TSK, whatever. Just don't let Haiden see it, or he'd never stop rambling. We're going to meet our contact near Tano-kuni, land of rice fields, Kakuzu grumbled with his deep voice. 2 months had passed since Naruto had joined Akatsuki, although he had to conclude that his joining the organization had changed very little. In fact, the more he trained, the more boring the bounties became. After that, you are going to retrieve our target. The secondary target is mine. Cooperation? With you? Naruto asked mockingly. Kakuzu had a bad temper, but Naruto couldn't really care. Annoying the old man was one of the few joys in life. Besides, the boy only really had memories of Zetsu and Kakuzu, plus some short meetings with people like Conan and the targets he hunted, so he had no way of knowing what was considered normal. Laugh it up. I'm going after a different bounty, a live one, Kakuzu spat. Naruto knew Kakuzu hated it to capture people alive. Corpses were much easier to transport, and killing, as Kakuzu once put it, was part of thrill of his profession. Those retards from Kiri stole a brat, and now Orochimaru wants him back. He was even willing to pay me a part in advance. Orochimaru? Naruto frowned. The name left a very bad taste in his mouth for some reason, every time Kakuzu had mentioned him. Kakuzu had, at sparse times when he was somewhat talkative, spoken about his colleagues within Akatsuki. Orochimaru and Haiden were two of the people whom Kakuzu seemed to despise most. Judging by the size of the boulder that Kakuzu threw his way, it did indeed piss him off severely. So Kakuzu is acting on orders. Oh well, not that it matters. This could be entertaining. Last bounty was boring as hell. Kunemori. He found it rather funny that Zetsu had picked such an alias for him. Naruto was already an odd name. Perhaps Kunemori was a better name for who he was now, while Naruto was a better name for the person he was before before whatever happened that caused him to lose his memories. Naruto had asked Zetsu about how he was found several times, and the Zetsu, both black and white, were willing to tell how they used Tobi to heal his broken body, how Naruto and Tobi had merged, with Tobi drastically altering this body, Kunemori's body. Mokuton was, as Zetsu explained, something of which Tobi was capable. Naruto, however, had a power to drastically improve the Kekkai Genkai. It was some complex matter of yin and yang energies, which Naruto hadn't really understood. It was obvious, though, that Naruto was still inferior compared to the last person who had possessed the wood release. After Naruto had learned the basics, Zetsu started to bring documents, secret documents, ones which even Kakuzu wasn't supposed to see. There were diaries and scrolls, written by a legend of old Uchiha Madara. Zetsu recounted how the old Uchiha was the one who started the real Akatsuki, with goals that even Kakuzu didn't know. Naruto couldn't find in himself to care about the goals and plans of others. He was just a grunt, Kunemori, one of the 10 members of Akatsuki. Although, grunt wasn't the word to describe him by normal standards, considering how Akatsuki only held members who were terrifying. But Naruto held no illusions. In his current condition, he wouldn't be able to beat Kakuzu. If this pain could make Kakuzu listen. The boy sighed and fiddled with the flower he had plucked while he had aimlessly wandered to the edge of the field. Kakuzu was resting. Sleep wasn't the word to describe it, as Kakuzu was still to some degree aware of his surroundings. The man had been used to living alone, after all. Naruto was a different case. Sleep was an obstacle. Sometimes he had nights in which he could rest peacefully, but more often than not he was haunted by nightmares, dreams, or perhaps memories. But elusive as dreams were, Naruto could never really recall them, not in detail, at least. There were vague impressions of someone blonde and imposing, someone capable of instilling fear in his heart, yet gentleness at the same time. It was a rather unusual person. He felt both pity and pride, a conflict of being confident in the person, yet an overwhelming desire to protect at the same time. He knew the person had a great weakness within, despite how fearsome the person was. Those dreams usually ended up with a feeling of being punched, startling him awake. Most of the other things he dreamt about were less confusing, except for one. Ever since he had encountered Yamanaka Kiyomi, this stupid dream kept him from resting properly. The turquoise eyes, they were the most vivid thing he could remember. Those dreams were the worst. They left him frustrated, wanting to know who it was that haunted him so. Forcefully, he shifted his attention to the field of flowers. He felt how his temper was getting the better of him, again, and did not want to go into another one of his frenzies. The feeling of blanking out and waking up in the middle of all that destruction, often with a severely bruised body due to the means which Kakuzu used to halt his onslaught, was not really pleasant. I already lack my memories. Perhaps that explains why I want to remain in control, or is it the way I've been taught by Kakuzu and that talking cabbage from hell? Looking at the flowers, Naruto found something that distracted him. Ever since he woke up with this ability, Naruto had found flowers the most beautiful creations of nature. Trees were mighty, and easier to use in combat, but the fragile flowers required delicacy. It was a delicacy he had yet to master. Sure, he could control them just like he controlled trees, but they always perished due to the amounts of chakra he put into them. Limiting the amount to the exact right level was difficult enough to silence his every thought. Sitting in lotus position, Naruto looked like he was meditating. "Tsunade-sama?" The girl knocked on the door of the Hokage's office. "Can I enter?" "Come on in, Ino," the strained voice of the older blonde resounded. "What makes you so worried?" she remarked, when she saw the frown on the face of the young Yamanaka. The 15-year-old Chunin handed her the file which she had been holding. Quickly scanning through the text, Tsunade frowned at the conclusion. It wasn't that remarkable to learn that a missing nin had died. Bounties were cashed in all the time, and they spared Tsunade a lot of manpower. Every missing nin taken down by bounty hunters was one less who needed to be hunted by her own forces. Moreover, Yamanaka Kiyomi was, relatively speaking, just small fry. The only reason as to why Tsunade had issued the bounty was because the woman had worked for the torture and interrogation department. It was a position that gave her a lot of knowledge, although Ibiki had assured Tsunade that the traitor hadn't possessed any truly important information. No, what made Tsunade frown was the final line of the report. A bounty hunter named Kunomori? Possible Mokuton? Tsunade narrowed her eyes, feeling another headache coming up. Yes, Tsunade-sama, Ino nodded solemnly. I thought, if it was true, if this is true, it is extremely dangerous. But I highly doubt that it is true. The only remaining person who has that ability is Yamato, and he can only use it because he is a genetic experiment that Orochimaru conducted with cells of my grandfather. Tsunade sighed, and opened a drawer of her desk. She always kept a small reserve there, even though Shizen tried to keep her from drinking while she was in office, although she regularly got too drunk to even leave the office, sleeping face down on the desk. Want some? No, thank you, Ino declined politely. Sake wasn't really something for her, she had found out the ugly way. It only brought up a lot of tears. Ino always wondered why people tried to escape reality by intoxicating themselves, while she only found more of her sadness welling up when she tried to drink. I'll send word to Jiraiya, Tsunade mumbled, after downing 2 large gulps straight from the bottle. Bounty hunters are notoriously difficult to track. It seems like a waste of time to dispatch a team of Umbu, knowing that this Kunomori has mostly likely long since left the area. If this is someone who just casually hunts down Chunin-level shinobi, he wouldn't restrict himself just to hunting within a single nation's borders. Do you think the claim of the Mokuton is true? Ino frowned. Father only found out because he investigated the bounty station where she was brought in. The man seemed to be rather angry, but too scared to really talk. He said that this Kunomori would impale him by using, and I quote, a freakish wood release. It is more likely that this is someone who has used a genjutsu, just like Kurenai, for example. Tsunade shook her head in denial. No, this can't be Mokuton. It is impossible. But regardless, I'll notify Jiraiya. His information network might pick up more on Kunomori. As unlikely as it seems, we can't completely rule out the possibility that it is true. How is Jiraiya-sama doing? Ino asked cautiously. Not cautiously enough, though, judging the pained grimace on the face of the Senju, and her reflexive consumption of sake. He only sends reports, Tsunade admitted. She felt horrible about the situation. How much time had passed since the fateful day when he had told her that Naruto had died? A year? 2 years? Tsunade could barely recall. She did not remember much of the depression she sank into after he brought back the accursed necklace, which she now kept it hidden in the same vault as where she hid the scrolls on the Kenjutsu which Konoha possessed. The gray time, devoid of any color, smell, or sound, was just a throbbing ache in her memories. 3 times she had entrusted that necklace to someone whose dream she had believed in. 3 times she had lost the man she had cared about. First her little brother, then the man she had wanted to marry, and then the boy who had almost seemed like a son or at the very least, a brattish little cousin. And yet she had persisted in keeping her position, somehow, for their sake, as Nawaki, Dan, and Naruto had all dreamt of becoming Hokage. In honor of their memory, no matter how much it hurt her, Tsunade remained Hokage, doing what they had wanted her to do. Nonetheless, there had been one particular moment when she had nearly resigned. Jiraiya had talked her out of it, saying that Naruto would never have wanted her to give up. I should not have spoken like that. Jiraiya tried to help me, and in my grief I lashed out at him. Hurt him. Something broke in him that day. She looked at her bottle and took another sip. Normally she broke a bone, but that time she broke something worse, his heart. Jiraiya only sends reports. He doesn't visit anymore. I see, Ino knew about the quarrel between the Sannin and the Hokage, even if the latter never wanted to push him away. Ino knew that Tsunade cared deeply about her last remaining friend. But some words were not easily forgiven, no matter how often the woman apologized. As her student, Ino was aware of the importance which Naruto had held to Tsunade. But as much as Tsunade was hurt, Jiraiya had lost even more. Shizen had told her once, when the two of them carried a passed-out Tsunade back home, how Jiraiya had taught Namake's Minato, the man who later became the Yondaime Hokage, and how he had been hurt by the death of the man he viewed as his son. Ino had been shocked to learn that Naruto was the son of this infamous man, and that Minato had made Jiraiya Naruto's godfather. It was telling of how important the boy had been to the old man. He was the legacy of Minato, and the last shred of family which Jiraiya had held dear. Even if Shizen had not made her swear secrecy, Ino would never have talked about this with others. Her own pain couldn't allow it. Her ever-cheerful blonde companion, the boy who was raised within the Yamanaka clan as one of their own, had just been put there to hide his true heritage. A blonde among blondes would not be noticed by anyone looking for Minato's possible children, although Ino couldn't care less about whom he descended from. To her, Naruto had been her closest friend. He was her reason for why Sake only brought up painful emotions, memories which she so desperately tried to suppress. He was the reason why she could somewhat understand Tsunade, and the reason why Tsunade was willing to listen to her. The traumatized woman had once confided her that she couldn't allow herself to be this weak while watching Ino endure that loss. That was why Ino vowed to never let Tsunade see her weakness. That was why she always refused when Tsunade invited her to drink with her. Konoha needed a strong Hokage, and it was up to her and Shizen to keep Tsunade strong. With a scowl hidden underneath his mask, one of the four Umbu that guarded Tsunade's office pondered what to tell his master. This blabbering idiot at that bounty station had to be eliminated. As long as Konoha did not believe the unfounded rumor of someone wielding the wood release, nothing was wrong. But if they did, Akasuna no Sasori had explicitly stated that the members of Akatsuki may be illustrious, but that their true abilities should remain hidden from the hidden villages. And the Umbu could not defy his master's orders. Your map is outdated, Kakuzu. Naruto frowned. It still states Ta no Kuni, land of rice fields, rather than Oto no Kuni, land of sound. Borders are the same, Kakuzu grunted. I don't care which idiot leads it, fair enough. Naruto found the climate of this country rather pleasant. There were plenty of forests, some mountains, and many farmers. It was green enough to suit his tastes, so much better than when he had traveled near a Wagakure or, heavens forbid, Sunagakure. Stone and sand were not the best places for someone with his abilities. Sure, he possessed the earth and water release which he somehow instinctively combined and used for the wood release, and he had the wind release on top of it, but he felt naked when there weren't forests around him. Kakuzu remained silent, radiating that same annoyance as always. He did not have much love for Orochimaru. The man stole away the people who had bounties on them, using them for experiments. When Naruto and Kakuzu finally found them, they were barely recognizable. They had failed to cash in several bounties due to Orochimaru. So, why are we doing this again? Akatsuki, Kakuzu pointed at the robe which Naruto now wore as well. Naruto shrugged, and they continued in silence. Naruto now wore the default clothing which Akatsuki provided. Dark blue pants, almost to the point where they seemed gray, with matching sandals. Naruto didn't wear a shirt, finding the thing too restrictive. He rather not wore the black robe either, although he did admit he thought that the red clouds on it looked badass. The remark had only elicited an exasperated sigh from the much older bounty hunter, who wondered if the boy would ever grow up. Kakuzu did, however, supply Naruto with a black-colored mask which covered Naruto's lower face, only revealing his cerulean eyes. Combined with how his blonde hair had grown out to a spiky yellow mane that reached to his shoulders, Kakuzu had reasoned that no one would recognize him now. The entire "don't be recognized" mantra was a motto that seemed to come from Zetsu, although Naruto, publicly known as Kunemori, wondered what could be such a big problem about his identity, when even the other people from Akatsuki weren't supposed to know. If people came after him for his Mokuton, aiming to capture or kill him, he just showed them how unwise that idea would be. His life had been filled with death anyway, so one victim more or less did not really matter to Naruto. But he wouldn't need to hide his name or his face from the people from Akatsuki in order to hide his bloodline. It made no sense, but without any clue that explained Zetsu's reasoning, Naruto couldn't really argue against it either. So, Otogekure serves the same purpose as Amigekure, destabilizing the borders? Naruto remarked after a while. His tall companion, second only to Kisame in height, remained silent, although the shift in posture made it clear that he was listening. AIM is located in the perfect position to mess with Suna, Iwa, and Konoha, while Oto has access to the borders of Kumo and Konoha. Meanwhile, Kirigakure is mixed up in that stupid war. All five focus their attention on petty conflicts, while no one is aware of the group of S-ranked mercenaries which fights for any side willing to pay them. You are still fishing for the goal of Akatsuki. If I'm supposed to be a part of it, I might as well figure out what I'm supposed to do, Naruto admitted. Money. Your purpose right now is money. We are gathering funds until Akatsuki begins to move. That is all you need to know right now. The remainder of the journey was done in silence again. It somewhat pissed off Naruto how people either tended to babble pointlessly, white Zetsu, or remained silent like some reclusive hobo, Kakuzu. Well, there was the Ice Queen treatment too, even though Naruto had only met Konan twice. He stared at the teal-colored ring at his right index finger, and asked himself why he even cared about Akatsuki. They didn't really give a damn about him, so why would he care about them? The only answer Naruto found was that he simply had nothing else to care about. This was all he knew, and he still needed to grow before he could stand a chance of standing on his own two legs, independent of everything. At the end of the day, the duo reached the border of Oto no Kuni and Yuno Kuni, land of hot water, where they were supposed to be meeting their contact. With a slight smile, hidden behind his black mask, Naruto wondered how long this contact would last. Kakuzu wasn't really a patient man. Do you sense someone? Kakuzu drawled, clearly still thinking this was a waste of his time. There were plenty of trees to extend Naruto's senses, and on such occasions, Kakuzu had learned to trust in his student/partner. Neither of the two were really words Kakuzu would use. The blonde was a nuisance that refused to perish, but was too interesting to really go all out against. Kakuzu found it rather amusing to know that the boy vowed to kill him. His defeat against Hashirama not forgotten, Kakuzu found it rather fitting if he would one day have a rematch against someone who might reach that man's level. There was a certain poetic justice in this situation that made even the cold-blooded bounty hunter wonder how it would end. However, Naruto still had a lot of training to go before he could even put a finger on a man like Hashirama. 3 people, east-northeast. One has a relatively strong chakra, probably a jonin, while the other 2 seemed chunin. 3 people. Kakuzu rolled his eyes, those unusual green irides with no pupils and red sclerae, upward. Perhaps that slithering piece of thrash thought he could appease me by offering 2 additional hearts. Perhaps they're worth something? Naruto suggested. Let's pick up the pace. Naruto chuckled, knowing that the suggestion of money had once again done its job. They were greeted by 3 shinobi that Naruto hadn't recognized from the bingo books. One girl seemed his age, short-tempered and red-haired. She made a rather stupid mistake. Fucking finally! You were supposed to be here yesterday, slow geriatric old fuck. Like Naruto noted, the girl made a mistake. Kakuzu already had a foul temper, having to do a mission for Orochimaru, and then she was foolish enough to provoke him as well. Naruto wasn't surprised when Kakuzu instantly ended the big-mouthed fool's life with a nasty, and scarily precise, futon jutsu. Naruto stepped in and ended the equally dumb response of her 6-armed companion. The boy, looking too arrogant in Naruto's opinion, intended to attack Kakuzu. A stake through the heart ended that ridiculous notion. Naruto knew that Kakuzu wouldn't have a heart that was affected by Orochimaru's experiments anyway. While that happened, the third and strongest person remained unmoved. The girl, or young woman, Naruto estimated her to be a year or two older than he was, hadn't even flinched when the Akatsuki duo killed her two associates. She had red lipstick, fair skin, dark eyes and light blue hair which she kept in a spiky ponytail with long strands of hair framing her face. Definitely not ugly, Naruto noted. Her outfit consisted of a green dress with a long left sleeve and a short right one, a red turtleneck which had a white, fluffy collar, and brown gloves. For shoes, she wore calf-length brown sandal boots. "Let's head out," she said, completely indifferent. Kakuzu seemed to approve of her, considering how she didn't waste time, and trailed. Not caring one way or the other, Naruto followed their example. At least this last Kunoichi wasn't an idiot. She did seem somewhat worried, though, after Naruto carefully observed her movements. Regardless, she did an excellent job at hiding her emotions. Capture and collect. Someone stole a kid. Her kid? Her brother? Oh well, as long as it offers an interesting battle, who cares? Chapter 3, Old Man of the Sea. If we had to go to Kirigakure anyway, why not meet up there? Naruto groaned. We've been running through the entire continent by now. This just feels like a big waste of time. For once, I agree with the brat, Kakuzu chimed in, glaring at the girl. Explain yourself, girl. Scowling, but nevertheless stopping, the girl turned towards them. 4 men broke into one of our bases. They abducted a child that Orochimaru-sama requires for his plans, and they're headed for Kiri? Naruto wondered. And don't you think it is polite to introduce yourself? Yes, they are heading towards Kiri, although I do not know why. Tayuya and Kidamaru, whom you met earlier, had tracked them. I guess that's why that guy needed us to do it. Naruto looked at Kakuzu. He can't hide behind his minions if the minions aren't strong enough for the task. The girl bristled, but knew better than to start an argument with people who were equal in rank to her master. Whether the masked boy was younger than her or not had little to do with it. That he was granted a cloak with Akatsuki's red clouds was proof enough of his ability, to her at least. And the name? Kakuzu drawled. It would be easier to estimate your worth if we had a name. Orochimaru had warned her about Kakuzu, and the unreliable personality the man possessed. Guren was confident in her strength, but Kakuzu had attained some sort of immortality, according to Orochimaru. It made him a bad person to antagonize. What was worse was that even Orochimaru had no details about the man's younger associate. Kunomori was someone who had appeared out of nowhere, killing an S-ranked missing nin from IWA to earn his spot in their organization. Not knowing in their world was often more dangerous than knowing. Guren, she declared, seems like your bingo book is outdated too, old man. The younger blonde chuckled, shaking his shoulder-length spiky hair. So, Guren-chan, tell us about the boy. And what is this? We're supposed to capture that scum alive. Don't act like you are familiar to me. Guren might have held back due to a combination of respect and fear, but she wasn't willing to entirely swallow her pride. The child is named Yukimaru. He possesses a strange deficiency in his chakra, very much akin to that of a Jinchuriki. Orochimaru-sama needs him for research. Why? Naruto was nothing if not curious, and he had finally found someone willing to talk. Or at least, he could bully her into talking. He found the situation more amusing than Guren did, that was for sure. If Yukimaru is able to connect to the Bijou, that ability might be used to capture them or their Jinchuriki. Zetsu hadn't neglected to explore the notions of the tailed beasts and the humans who were sacrificed as a means to contain the immeasurable power of the Bijou. Several of the scrolls and books which Zetsu had brought him, all from Madara, had noted that the Mokuton Kekkei Genkai had the unusual ability to suppress the Bijou. Perhaps this boy has an ability similar to my own. Could he be family? Naruto wondered. One of the 4 who infiltrated the base was identified as Hozuki Sujetsu. Guren continued. Orochimaru-sama has offered a substantial amount of money to get Sujetsu, but only if alive. This is because the Hozuki clan has the ability to turn their bodies into water, so upon death there would not be much data left for Orochimaru-sama to collect. That's why you're capturing Sujetsu. Naruto put 1 and 1 together and realized that Kakuzu was once again motivated by Ryo. Oh well, it's fine with me. Does this Yukimaru kid have to survive, or do we only have to ensure that his body doesn't fall in enemy hands? Survive? Guren lied without skipping a beat. Orochimaru had not ordered that specifically, but she had her reasons to want the boy to survive. Fine, Kunomori shrugged. But first, I'm getting some shut-eye. I'm tired of running around all freaking day. There is a village not too far. Don't bother, the blonde cut her off. In a flurry of movement, he went from snake to rat to ox to ram and back to the snake hand seal again, putting both hands to the ground afterwards. Mokuton, Shichuka no Jutsu would release, 4-pillar house technique. A complete house rose from the ground, much to Gyurin's shock. I take the upper floor, Kakuzu grumbled. TSK, always hogging the room with the best view, Naruto sighed. Fine, I'll take the left wing. The right room is all yours, Gyurin-chan. Too stunned to even properly protest against the suffix, Gyurin merely nodded like a speechless fool. Her bloodline, the Shoten Kekkei Genkai, was rare. But Mokuton was the stuff of legends. Small wonder this boy wore that cloak. It was odd to think that anyone could create an entire wooden building, including furniture, and yet this is what had happened. The lack of mattress was slightly annoying, but the wooden bed, overgrown with moss, still offered a good place to sleep. However, Gyurin didn't really sleep that well with the knowledge of having one S-ranked murderer in her vicinity, and a Mokuton user of unknown skill on top of it. Although she assumed that Kunomori easily qualified for the S rank as well, if he could use his bloodline to do this. Besides, Gyurin had always been a light sleeper. Perhaps that is why she awoke when she heard someone move through the house, trying to exit silently. He was not silent enough, though. Grabbing her clothes, Gyurin got dressed and stalked after the person who left. She assumed that it was Kunomori, considering how Kakuzu had a much heavier build, and would generate different sounds while moving. Confirming her expectations, she indeed found the young blonde nin of Akatsuki, sitting in the field in front of the impromptu house. Legs crossed, hands folded, and eyes closed, it seemed like he was meditating. That would be an odd pastime for someone who earlier spoke so casually about life and death. But if Gyurin had learned one thing while serving her master, it was that all members of Akatsuki were peculiar. There was the infamous puppet master, Akasuna no Sasori, for instance, who was her master's partner. The man had expressed his desire to make a puppet out of her, but fortunately for Gyurin, Orochimaru had declined. Gyurin didn't know what making a puppet out of her entailed, but the sinister way he had made the request spelled bad news. The only thing more deformed than the man's body was his humanity. Even her master seemed more humane in comparison, at least to Gyurin, who arguably was not the most unbiased source regarding Orochimaru. Her approach had not been unnoticed. Naruto had felt her chakra, although he had to admit she knew how to sneak around. It was no big surprise, considering she was the servant of a half-snake. The question was she just as treacherous? What would she do now that his back was turned towards her? Would she attack? Instead, she just stood there, watching him. Gathering information for your master? Naruto eventually spoke up. Or are you simply here for a pretty flower? Who are you? Just call me Kunomori, like everyone does. Why answer a question with a question, though? How rude, Naruto said, feigning to be hurt. Just when I thought I found a normal person to talk to. Is this just a game to you? Gyurin growled. Naruto didn't see her face, but the annoyance practically radiated from the girl. First you want a break, and then you wake up in the middle of night, yet you accused me of wasting time? Why do people always assume that they know everything about another? I overestimated you, Gyurin-chan. Why would anyone have trouble sleeping? Silence followed after his words, and he instead started fiddling with flowers again. He was slowly getting better at this, growing them without completely exhausting them, no longer overloading them with chakra. The better he got at it, the more attuned he became, the more he came to realize how fundamentally wrong Uchiha Madara was about Hashirama. True strength did not come from within. Those with the Mokuton bloodline could gather strength from the nature around them. They connected to the roots of all growing things, existing in harmony with the world. One could sense the immeasurable amount of chakra that resided outside. Though chakra wasn't really the word for it, Naruto considered, as this energy wasn't. It seemed more similar to the physical and spiritual energies, only it was something disconnected, an energy which flowed freely, not bound to body or soul. It was free to access for those who were capable of looking beyond themselves, but not without a cost, considering how easy it was to lose oneself in such power. Perhaps that is why Madara never really understood. His diary seemed to be permeated with an obsession for power. Almost in the way that Kakuzu would write a book about money, so did Madara write about jutsu. She's still here. Naruto had half expected her to be gone by now. Why are you so loyal to someone like Orochimaru? Isn't Orochimaru-sama part of the same organization as you? She retorted. It became quite exasperating, actually, how she persisted in ignoring his questions and instead asked him ones of her own. You think that makes him my buddy? You think Kakuzu is a friend to me? Come on, Gyurin-chan, you can't be that naive. Zetsu had taught that lesson to him long ago. Trust only yourself. Naruto knew Zetsu was using him, just like Kakuzu was using him, like how Akatsuki was using him. All the people he knew just viewed him as a tool, all the people he could remember, at least. Then why did you join Akatsuki? So you assume I have some kind of goal. It is quite bold to ask for such a thing so directly. You're not answering my questions. Neither are you, Naruto shot back. But I'm not inclined to talk about this. So why not return to my first question? Why are you loyal to Orochimaru? You refuse to answer, yet expect me to answer? Fine, Naruto sighed, getting rather bored. Why did she waste his time like this, with those petty words? He could be training, yet instead he was exchanging words. Words, they were just air escaping the lips, meaningless, without any real content. Actions had meaning. Naruto didn't agree with Kakuzu that material possessions held meaning, though. Money was useful, but pointless in itself. The coins and paper were only worth what the other would give for it. What was the value based on? On nothing, Naruto had eventually concluded. A corpse was worth money because another party gave money to the bounty station, which gave money to the bounty hunter who brought the corpse. But who decided the worth? What was the value of life? It was a thought that had crossed Naruto's mind after killing Yamanaka Kayomi, who had been so desperate to prolong her life, even at the cost of her pride and her body. A part of Naruto's 15-year-old mind pondered what would happen if he pushed Guren into a corner. Would she offer her body, like Kayomi had done? What is the value of pride? He silently asked himself. Naruto did not want to abuse the girl, even though he did think that she was rather attractive, in spite of her cold and haughty demeanor. Well? She tapped at the ground, obviously impatient due to his silence. Feisty. She definitely has pride. I can almost understand the fun Kakuzu has in hunting. Breaking the pride of your prey is amusing. I have to get my mind back on the rails again. He looked back, his eyes having adjusted to the nightly darkness a long time ago, his blue orbs piercing her dark eyes. I have no attachments, thus I have no loyalties to anyone. I am a tool, until I grow too troublesome to be used. I am alone in this world, until I remember who I was. Remember who you were? Like I said, do not make foolish assumptions about me wasting time during the night. Naruto shot back, recalling the eyes had seen in his dreams. The expression had been completely different, not the scowl which he saw on Guren's face right now. Now that you have established my absence of loyalty, why are you loyal? She wanted to turn around and stalk back into the building, but a vine had taken hold of her feet. There is a limit to the amount of rudeness I tolerate, you know, Naruto frowned. To be frank, I killed most of my targets for far less. Although I do not yet see the value of ending your life, I can't say I see value in prolonging it either. His words were calm, but something about him that made her shiver. Perhaps it was the chakra she felt through the vine that held her. Perhaps it was the look in his eyes. Guren could not explain it. She felt weak, fragile, almost like a little girl. Just like when Orochimaru-sama looked at her. It was a look that both robbed her of her confidence and gave her meaning at the same time. Crystal covered her skin, a pinkish hue, armor to protect herself from the threat he formed. This is my Kekkei Genkai, she spoke with more calmness than she inwardly felt. When I was a child, people feared me for it. I lacked control, and posed a danger. As such I was shunned by the people of my village. I don't even know if I had family, or if they cast me aside. But one day, Orochimaru-sama came. He destroyed the village, single-handedly. He had such power that I saw him as a god. So when he invited me to come with him, I did. You were envious of his power? Yes. I knew that if I had such power, no one would shun me. They would hate me, but their fear would be greater. Do you value Yukimaru because he fears you? Naruto frowned. He found her view on life quite akin to his own. Although in his world, there wouldn't be a random shinobi who stepped in and wiped out the S-ranked people who kept him as a tool. In fact, now that he considered it, if someone else freed him, it would only lead to him being his liberator's tool. Freedom is attained by oneself. Not for me, but by me. No! Yukimaru is different. Naruto tilted his head a little, somewhat confused by her answer. Through the vine he felt how her heartbeat changed a little. Why, he is... I have to... His head jerked to the left. Naruto's blue eyes widened. Warn Kakuzu, he ordered Guren. He's a light sleeper, but be careful. He has a nasty temper when he wakes up. What is going on? Visitors, Naruto grunted. Something within his voice made her hurry. So far, he had been rather flippant about most things, but this was no joke. Looking up, Naruto wondered if he could ever live a peaceful life, free as the clouds that drifted, obscuring the distant stars from his view. Life was about balance. The calmness of nature was something he felt, but the insanity of mankind was also present. Dragged along by Kakuzu, Naruto had seen some very nasty specimens of their species. In a way, Naruto wondered if he should stop to restrain his more violent urges, and just cut loose, or if he should remain calm and collected. He had accepted death as a part of life, but the excesses in violence and unnecessary cruelty were things foreign to the nature he observed around him. Resigned to what was going to happen, Naruto stood up. A triple-bladed scythe flew towards him, from the cover of darkness. Vines erupted from the ground, binding the weapon. Naruto's hands flew through a couple of seals, and seconds later a loud fit of swearing resounded, accompanied by laughter. "Serves you right, moron!" "Yo, brat," Hoshigaki Kisame nonchalantly greeted his fellow member of Akatsuki. As if he hadn't just seen how his partner had been skewered in two halves, torso being ripped from the lower body by Naruto's trees. "Kisame," Naruto grunted. "Couldn't you have kept that lunatic away? Kakuzu is going to whine for days that he has to stitch Haiden in one piece again. You know how much he hates doing things for free. He can refuse it just as well." Kisame shrugged, a wide grin unveiling his pointed shark-like teeth. "Haiden is a damn pain in the ass. He talks too much. But it's fun to see him getting pummeled. Usually my sparring partners die quickly, but he at least lasts. He is too stupid to die." Naruto shook his head. "I'd say it is his sole redeeming quality. Perhaps you should ask Kakuzu if he can sew Haiden's mouth. I bet he'd willingly do that for free." "Kunomori-san, your sense of humor is truly a bright light for our organization." The tall swordsman patted Naruto, who he only knew as Kunomori, on the back with such force that the teen almost stumbled forward. "Yo, Kakuzu, you old goat." Kisame, the man's foul mood seemed almost tangible. "What excuse do you have for waking me?" Don't be so damn uptight," Kisame laughed, being one of the few who could afford to ignore Kakuzu's mood swings. Kisame was at least as monstrous as the five-hearted man, even when one didn't count Samahada, the sentient blade that the former Kiri nin carried. "Can you patch up that retarded partner of mine?" He tried to attack little Kunomori-san. "Again?" Kakuzu sighed. "He never learns. I'll do it when it is light. I don't feel like searching for Haiden's body parts during the night. Perhaps he can bleed to death if you leave him in pieces for a longer period of time?" Laughing at the older man's slightly hopeful remark, Kisame shook his head. "I tried, but it doesn't work. Beheading also doesn't work. Sucking away his chakra is also futile, as is drowning, setting aflame, electrocution too. He just, well, I guess if we bury him deep enough after we cut him apart, he can't escape." "Sounds like a plan." Naruto cracked his fingers. "Don't," Kakuzu stopped the blonde. "Akatsuki needs a guy like him, annoying as he may be." Regardless, he turned back into the building. Guren just stood there, silent and a bit stiffly. "Oh, you've got yourself a little girlfriend too, Kunomori-san?" Kisame chuckled. "And here I thought you were just as cold as Kakuzu. Quite a looker too." "She's not, and I'm not," Naruto sighed. "And can you stop freaking her out by radiating so much chakra?" "Make me," Kisame challenged. "This again? Still sore that you lost last time? But now that you're part of the club, I expect that you've grown, kiddo." What does he mean?" Guren muttered, rather disturbed that Kisame had a presence which would even put her master to shame. Orochimaru was a monstrously strong shinobi in his own right, but only a handful of people could match Hoshigaki Kisame in terms of raw chakra. Naruto knew that Kakuzu was wary of the man, silently admitting that his own chakra reserves were inferior. Of course, Kakuzu was likely the most versatile ninjutsu specialist in the world, with a vast amount of experience to boot. However, Kisame could compensate, perhaps even overcompensate, that disadvantage with his blade, in comparison to these two. Haiden, even if being an S-ranked criminal himself, was but a stumbling fool who only had his immortality to keep him going. He was slower, weaker, dumber. The fact that even Naruto, the youngest member of Akatsuki, easily kicked his ass was what made Haiden rather violent each time he saw Naruto. Unfortunately for him, this was his third instant defeat in a row. Had she possessed less self-control, Guren would have freaked out when Naruto answered Kisame's challenge. The earth at the boy's feet cracked, creating a spider web-like pattern due to the sheer pressure of his chakra. It was almost like he had a vague greenish glow around him, and for the first time Guren truly accepted the fact that this boy was part of the same organization as her master. Perhaps he still lost to Kisame, perhaps Orochimaru was still slightly stronger than him, but Naruto still had years to grow up. Being this strong at his age was simply, insane, Mokuton, she mumbled to herself, feeling the same kind of awe that she felt the first time she met Orochimaru. Guren was confident, very confident actually, in her own abilities. She knew she could pretty much best any jonin. But these people, these monsters, were on a different level altogether. The gap between A rank and S rank shinobi was incomparable to that between B rank and A rank. You've improved! Kisame still had that carefree laugh. Chakra, to him, was no threat. Only food for Samahata. They had nicknamed him the monster of the hidden mist, and the tailed beast without a tail, but it wasn't his raw strength that made Kisame frightening. It was his ability to leech off the chakra of his opponents. The stronger his enemies were, the better Kisame could fight against them. And it has only been a few months since we last met, Kisame complimented Naruto. If you keep this up, you'll become an interesting challenge in a year or so. That long? Naruto scowled, stopping his intimidation tactics. He did not want to risk revealing how he could go into frenzy when losing control of his chakra. It was another thing that Zetsu, and Kakuzu as well, had told him to hide. Sure, he could muster more chakra, but what good was it if it caused him to go berserk? You should be proud, brat. Ugh, and here I was hoping that I could kick your blue ass with only a few more months of training, Naruto sighed. Pain in the ass, S-ranked monsters. You've become such a monster too, Kisame retorted, baring his pointed teeth with a wide grin. Oh, and that idea of burying Haiden, could you do it for now? It is easier to catch some sleep if I don't keep hearing his ravings in the distance all night. Fine. When the two turned indoors, Guren released a sigh of which she didn't even know she was holding in. At least she found two people strong enough to liberate Uchimaru, she told herself, trying to ignore the unease she felt. The knowledge of being inferior compared to someone else was not one she appreciated. Although, with the true power of her Shokan Kekkei Genkai still hidden, she knew she'd at least have the element of surprise in case she would be forced to fight these S-ranked monsters. I just hope it is enough to get away with my life. And Uchimaru's. A woman stood in front of a table, impatiently studying the map in front of her. The map covered all of Mizuno Kuni, and the various bases which they had throughout the nations, and the positions of their enemies. She was tall and slender, seemingly in her late 20s or early 30s. Her vibrant green eyes darted from left to right, quickly gathering the information her mind demanded. She was the strongest warrior left, and therefore the de facto leader of the rebellion, Chirimi Mei. Her long auburn hair and her stylish, yet surprisingly practical, dress would not give the impression that she was the trump card against Yagura, but all who had seen her in battle knew differently. In spite of her inclination to look as beautiful as she could, Mei was an extremely dangerous kunoichi. Regardless of her individual skill, however, was the worry that her opponent was even stronger. Yagura was older than he appeared, and aside from being a highly capable shinobi in his own right, he was also backed by the might of the Sanbai. The three-tailed bijou, that was rumored to have corrupted and destroyed Yagura's mind, had driven him to insanity, pushing him into a state which started the entire bloodline purges, causing the civil war that tore apart their nation. When she was younger, Mei had admired Yagura for his strength and composure, yet he had fallen before the bijou. Could she, even if she had the power of two Kekkei Genkai flowing through her veins, even hope to go where he had failed, defeating the monstrous turtle-like being? Mei sighed and started at the map. She had spread her forces thin. The rebels had the upper hand, pushing those who remained loyal to Yagura back to the point where the majority was hiding behind the walls of Kirigakure, hiding behind their Mizukage. Spreading their forces had been a risky move for the rebels, but with Yagura passively watching how his nation fell apart, this was the strongest way to eradicate the loyalist forces. Every day they were allowed to roam free was one more day at which innocent people were targeted for the power of their blood. The rebels fought for the people. Her blue dress, revealing as it was, even with the mesh armor she wore underneath, fluttered when Mei turned around. Her lips, clad in purple lipstick, squeezed together in mild disappointment when she saw who had entered. Ayo, why are you here? I was waiting for reports. My apologies, Mei-sama, but this is urgent, Ayo rattled. Mei noticed how out of breath he sounded, as if he had rushed to her as fast as he could. She wondered what could have unnerved him this much. Had he seen Yagura? Kiri did not have many left who could face a jonin like Ayo. In fact, many of the people who still had enough intelligence to reach such a level of skill had already abandoned the loyalists. Except there were those who relished the cruel reign of the Yondaime Mizukage, of course. She wondered what drove people to like violence so much. Speak, she ordered him curtly. 3 people. Ayo had an odd hesitation, as if he wasn't sure about what he had seen. 3 people are watching our encampment. The weakest of the three easily qualifies as a jonin, and the two stronger ones, one of them has a body unlike any I've ever seen before. It is like he has threads instead of flesh underneath his skin. Frowning, May looked at the map again. They had hidden on a relatively small island, their camp acting as headquarters for the entire rebel force, although it was currently only populated by a very small force. Those two young or old, those two weak, had already been evacuated elsewhere. The majority of their force was spread throughout the nation. Yagura? She asked. It would be the worst possible moment if he decided to strike now. Their spies had said he had cooped himself up in his living quarters, that he wouldn't go out of Kirigakure unless the village was directly attacked. Had they been tricked? Had Yagura waited until she was relatively unprotected, to strike her down at the most opportune moment? If a new dispute on the leadership of the rebel forces erupted, it could give Yagura the chance he needed to turn the tides of this civil war. No, Ao shook his head. But the strongest chakra, the man with the threads, his chakra reserve is barely inferior to that of the Yondaime. The encampment to which Guren had led them was practically abandoned, Naruto noted. This was where the trail had ended, where the Odo forces had been forced to retreat and await reinforcements. They weren't capable enough to engage the rebel forces, although Guren did add that there had been far more troops last time she had been here. Rebels, Kakuzu grunted. You said that the squad that stole that little brat was loyal to Kirigakure. We found traces of a fight. 2 burnt corpses. We assume the other 2 are taken captive. Guren nodded towards the encampment. They have taken Yukimura too, so that Hozuki kid could just as well be dead? Kakuzu hissed, his temper worsening drastically at the idea that he had wasted so much of his time for nothing. We could not say for sure. If that brat is dead, so are you. Calm your tits, Naruto interfered. There aren't many people down there. 20, I'd estimate. Several who could pass for jonin, he sensed through the roots in the earth. One is stronger. Not just your regular A-rank opponent. Probably S-ranked. Must be someone who's worth something. His bingo book already out of his pockets, Kakuzu quickly flipped through the bounties issued by Kirigakure. Kiri offered substantial bounties for the heads of the rebel leaders. Perhaps this isn't as much of a waste of time as I thought. They're starting to run around now. Like an anthill that took damage, Naruto noted, amused by the observation. From a distance, there wasn't much difference. They must have a damn good sensor if they noticed us from this distance. Kakuzu's finger stopped flipping pages, having found the right bounty. Byakugan no Ao, his smirk might not be seen, due to the cloth in front of his mouth, but it could be heard. At least, Naruto heard it. He doubted that Guren would notice the subtle differences in the man's voice. One of the leading figures within the rebellion, a jonin who has a Byakugan stolen from a main house Hyuga. He has both bounties on his head from Kiri and Konoha. The Hyuga must be pretty pissed that someone stole their dojutsu, Naruto chuckled. Konoha's bounty is the highest, yes, Kakuzu's dark voice had something predatory. 30 million ryo is too nice to pass up. Strategy? Their camp is big, Kakuzu frowned. You stick outside, ensure that no one escapes, and attack at range. Removing that stupid wall is the first thing you'll have to do. I'll move in and kill everything that moves. We can look at the corpses later, and estimate their worth. What about Yukimura? Guren felt a slight panic when Kakuzu announced how he was planning to exterminate everyone. We can't leave without. You get that brat, if you want to, Kakuzu huffed. I don't give a crap about him. Akatsuki needs the money more than that brat. Now that I think about it, you'll also be the one who will fetch that Hozuki for us. There is one building at the center that has several rooms underground, Naruto supplied. Probably where they keep their prisoners. I can't sense any civilians or children down there though. So if that Yukimura kid is somewhere, he's bound to be in those underground rooms. I can't say for sure, though. They must have barriers in place. Life sucked. That was about the summary of what had happened during the last few years. After the death of his older brother at the hands of that rebel scum, and the increasing insanity of his Mizukage, with the violence spiraling out of control, this mission was really only a cherry on the cake. Why on earth would Mizukage-sama want this sniveling little brat? Hozuki Sujetsu thought, while lying on the rather uncomfortable ground of the cell in which he was imprisoned. Turning himself into water or no, with a cell reinforced by barriers there was no escape, even for him. He could see the sweating and unconscious form of his teammate. The man had gotten injured, and it didn't seem like he would last that much longer. Sujetsu didn't really care. He was more worried about himself. The rebels had no love for him. Yagura had hunted down all people with Kekkai Genkai, yet had been big enough of a hypocrite to pardon some bloodlines. This made them collaborators, in the eyes of the rebels. Suigetsu, and especially his older brother Mangetsu, had been valued by the Yondaime. They were the new generation of the Seven Swordsmen, or what was left of them, anyway. Wielding the Hiramakari had not saved Suigetsu from being beaten. Then the rebels took the sword from him after they had paralyzed him. Stupid lightning-based attacks. Shut up! He suddenly exclaimed, fed up with the child. Really, brat, why do you keep crying like that? It's pathetic. The boy did not respond, though. Yukimura had been their target, a boy snatched away by Orochimaru, one of the world's most dangerous criminals. The mission had seemed like guaranteed suicide, but had ended up being pretty easy. There was no Orochimaru, and no particularly strong henchman either. There was only a Kaguya, but he had been too sickly to pose much of a threat. Besides, what good had his Kekkai Genkai been against Suigetsu? Physical attacks were practically useless. On the other hand, no one lasted very long without air to breathe. And Suigetsu had the perfect ability to drown people. Perhaps it was the ease of their mission that had made them slip up, lowering their guard just enough to walk into a simple trap. Out of nowhere, they had suddenly ended up being surrounded and overwhelmed by rebel forces. Worst of all being that damn Terumi. Suddenly the door flew open, quite literally. Kicked out of its hinges, the entire thing was lofted into the big room to which the 3 prison cells were all connected. A young woman, clad in a green coat or dress, Suigetsu didn't bother with the specifics, fashion was too annoying to care about, walked in. She held some kind of pink crystal object in her hand, almost resembling a blade, which was dripping in blood. Buren-san! Oh fuck! Otogekure has come, Suigetsu paled. And if they're crazy enough to invade this encampment, it must mean that Orochimaru has come as well. Getting encased by crystal was the last thing which Suigetsu could remember before he passed out, deprived of oxygen. He hadn't even registered the sounds of explosions, nor Buren's hasty expression. Get out of my way, woman. It is not your head that I require. The man removed his cloak, unveiling his stitched-together body. May felt her brow twitch from the mere sight. Ugly. Who are you? Why is Akatsuki targeting us? Oh ho, so you even know about our organization. Well, it figures, considering we did quite a few jobs in the area. The man chuckled darkly. Regardless, step away from that man. He's mine. Looking behind her, May saw how Ao was panting. Considering the way he held his arm, it was broken on several places. She had no idea what was going on. How could someone just barge through her forces like this? The blue-haired girl had that unusual Kekkai Genkai. May had never seen anyone with the Shoten Kekkai Genkai before, and the way how she disposed of the men between her and the "You're after our prisoners," May concluded. So you do work for Yagura. The latter statement is wrong, the man grumbled. You're wasting my time. Unless you have a bounty on your head, piss off. It's the one with the Byakugan who I want. Those 30 million ryo are mine. May signaled the remainder of her men. You two take Ao away. The rest surround him. Wrong move, girl. The man bowed forward, and something, May didn't even want to describe it, other than saying that masks were emerging from his body, bulged out of his back. 4 sentient masks, with bodies made of some sort of black thread, jumped out. They grew and grew until the 4 became monstrosities that towered even over the imposing man. Without as much as a signal, truly indicating that the masked monsters were sentient, the 4 beasts attacked. Wielding water, fire, lightning, or wind, the beings made short work of the rebels. May wanted to help, but she was pushed back. The futon, Atsugai, wind release, pressure damage, in particular, destroyed a large part of the base. So the guy got away, the man remarked, seemingly not caring what his summons, or whatever they were, did. May peeked behind her, and Ao had indeed managed to get away. Don't, he grunted when he saw her smile. The brat is waiting outside. He'll know better than to let such a prize escape. Akatsuki have always been seen in pairs. The girl wore the Hittite of Otogekure. Is Ao walking straight into the other man from Akatsuki? May pondered, gathering all chakra to her lungs, filling them with her favorite liquid. The acidic mud crashed forward, flowing over 2 of the thread monsters, while the man was forced to jump back. Kekkai Genkai. It seems I have to revise my strategy. With a flash of light, one of the monsters jumped out of May's attack. This was the monster with the lightning affinity. Small wonder it escaped, considering how the attack mostly relied on the earth element. The other beast, however, perished. I do hope you have a water affinity as well, because I need to restock, the man laughed darkly. The 3 remaining thread monsters surrounded him, seemingly merging into his body again. Katon Zukoku, fire release, searing migraine. May noticed the amount of chakra pushed into the attack, and for a moment she was confused by the small fireball that was fire from one of the man's masks. The masks had somehow merged with his body, appearing on his body like he was some kind of twisted voodoo doll. He had seemed to be reluctant when she entered the fray, but after unveiling his masks the man had stopped playing around. The relatively small fireball hit the ground, and the inferno that followed. May was glad she had created a distance, the precaution having saved her life, as it gave her the fraction of a second she needed to launch a Swait Unjutsu that prevented her from being roasted. Not bad, the man remained far too calm for May's liking. Your judgment was correct. Still, there's too much of a gap in the battle experience between you and me, girl. It is considered a common courtesy to introduce yourself to a woman first. May narrowed her eyes at him. He couldn't be that much older than she was, could he? 10, or at most 20, years older, she estimated. Not enough to really a reason to brag about a difference in experience, unless he thought she was younger than she actually was. It was a flattering thought, but unfortunately from the wrong man. Doton, Domu, Earth Release, Earth Spear. His skin turned dark, and in a flash of movement he closed the distance between them. May was a ninjutsu specialist, but close combat wasn't bad. Her companions were either dead or at a distance, so there was no reason to be careful. Futon, Koma no Jutsu, Boil Release, skilled mist technique. She breathed out a cloud of mist. The strong corrosive acid hitting her opponent's fist, who hissed in pain. He was fast, too fast to make her attack really hit home. Futon, Daitapa, Wind Release, great breakthrough. He blew the acidic mist away from himself, dispersing it in the process. May knew it was a relatively weak ability when used in the open air, but at close range it usually was extremely effective. Good enough to melt the flesh off her opponent's bones, usually. This man was different. His previous jutsu had given him defenses so strong that he only seemed to have suffered superficial damage from her attack. The blue-haired girl emerged from the building where the underground prison was located. The unknown little boy who they had captured along with the Kiri Jonin was on her back, allowing her to move quickly through the stronghold. She held a floating orb of crystal next to her, an orb that contained one of the men from Kiri, the Hozuki. Already pressured with this one opponent, May wasn't looking forward to being outnumbered. Kakuzu-san, I'll return to Kunomori-san. Should I come back to aid you? Just go, he growled at his. Were they even allies? He didn't seem to treat her as such, and the girl seemed too scared for it as well, even though she hid it very well. Then again, May figured that there would be some fear on her face too. This guy was inhuman. So your Kakuzu. May tried to buy time after the girl had sped past them. She hadn't made a move to try to stop her. Dragging another Kekkai Genkai user into the fight would only be stupid, especially if that girl had shown no intention of joining the battle. This fight was already bad enough as it was. Making it worse was not something she could afford. Things could not get much worse, if she was honest. Ninjutsu was her specialty, and so far Kakuzu had easily outclassed her in that area. Telling someone your name is not so. Her voice trailed off, and Kakuzu's head slammed to the left. His eyes sprung wide open. There was a malicious, demonic chakra. Yagura, May groaned, her face pale as a ghost. So you did work for that monster? It would seem that you are lucky. Kakuzu abandoned his stance and stood straight, still looking at the area where the massive chakra was radiating from. A Jinchuriki is worth more than a rebel leader. Screwing up the defenses of the rebels' stronghold was a piece of cake for Naruto. And when the handful of survivors came out of the gate, that was easily handled as well, although it did leave Naruto wondering how it was possible that Kakuzu's target had escaped from his grasp. Was there someone with a higher bounty in there? Naruto used his vines to kill the escapees, creating a Moku Bushin who dragged Kakuzu's target to him. I gotta do everything for the old bastard, don't I? Hands pressed to the ground, Naruto closed his eyes. He realized that Kakuzu was battling the strongest chakra signal among the rebels. Perhaps it was the leader, who would undoubtedly fetch a nice price as well. He also noticed how Zetsu was inbound, fast as always. On this lush little island, Naruto's senses covered the entire landmass. Unfortunately, he remained blind to everything that was on the water. Traveling by boat had not been an experience Naruto liked all that much. It was far worse than last time, feeling blind without being able to sense the world through the surrounding flora. While he could use the flora growing in shallow waters, such as kelp, water lilies, reeds, and lotus, these surrounding seas made things more difficult. Reaching out that deep through the ever-moving water was an entirely different matter from letting chakra flow through the unmoving earth and rock. He made a mental note that he required more training to cope with these environments. Perhaps he could reach out and manipulate smaller things like algae and plankton too. Hello. White Zetsu was as cheerful as ever. Long time no see, Naruto-kun. Why are you here, Zetsu, and where's your other half? He's elsewhere. Zetsu brushed it off with a grin. But you've got bigger issues. Naruto's cerulean eyes were dragged away from the plant-like human, or human-like plant, depending on how you looked at Zetsu. Seems like you felt him enter the island, Zetsu nodded. You must try to capture him. Alive. You're kidding me, right? Naruto blinked. Who is that guy? This chakra. It almost puts Kisame to shame. A Jinchuriki. Zetsu gave Naruto a confusingly knowing smile. What was it that amused Zetsu so much? Naruto figured that it was because this was someone who could kill him, something which Zetsu and Kakuzu had been trying to do for quite some time now. Your Mokuton should be useful in this battle. Remember, don't kill him, or else? Naruto scoffed. Zetsu's silence was enough of an indication. Failure was pain, in the best case, or death, in the worst case. Perhaps this was why Zetsu had kept Naruto alive. Perhaps this was why Kakuzu had drilled him, making him used to fighting superior opponents. Perhaps Akatsuki needed the Jinchuriki, or their bijou, for this war of which Kakuzu had spoken. Little did he know that he was a Jinchuriki too. Only Zetsu and Kakuzu were aware of that fact, the latter keeping his silence due to Zetsu's plan. The Mokuton Kekkei Genkai made sure no one else could notice the sealed creature. His eyes closed, gathering as much chakra as he could. Naruto waited until his enemy appeared. The speed at which the Jinchuriki moved unnerved Naruto. Yagura, the fourth Mizukage of Kirigakure, the third Jinchuriki rumored to have gained control of the bijou that was sealed within him, was not an enemy to be trifled with. In spite of his reputation, the outward appearance of the Jinchuriki somewhat disappointed Naruto. Yagura seemed to be little more than a boy, smaller even than Naruto was. Still, Naruto knew that Yagura was an adult. His height, his messy gray hair, pink pupilless eyes, and stitch-like scar running over his face, however, made Naruto almost think that he was mistaken. Yagura wore a gray, sleeveless shirt with the Kirigakure forehead protector attached to the front, short-sleeved mesh armor over which he also had a green poncho along with a turquoise sash around his waist, paired with a green apron over his pants. In his hands, the man appearing to be a boy carried a staff-like pole weapon with hooks on the top and bottom. Strangely, the staff had what seemed to be a green flower at the larger upper hook. It all fit the description that Naruto once found in Kakuzu's bingo book, although he had believed that the information had been outdated when it considered Yagura's height and apparent age. Then again, many Jinchuriki were blessed with unusual abilities. Yo, Naruto made himself known. It seemed like Yagura was more interested in getting to the encampment, probably because the rebels were his enemies. The pupilless pink eyes stared into Naruto's cerulean eyes. The eyes scanned over the young Mokuton user, but when Yagura couldn't find any Hittite or symbols indicating that Naruto was one of the rebels, he averted his attention. Begone. You're quite rude for someone so short, you know. The glare, accompanied by the murderous intent that radiated from the chakra which Yagura generated so casually, made Naruto a bit anxious at first, but it was also exhilarating. The knowledge that his life was on the line was one of the few emotions which Naruto had. Neither Zetsu nor Kakuzu cared much about him, other than the worry that their tool was functional. But a normal human life was something Naruto had never experienced. It would be better said that could not remember that he had ever experienced it. The tranquility of nature or the vortex of emotions from the humans, Naruto dangled somewhere in between. Having lived his life, as far as he could recall at least, as a bounty hunter, this hunt was one of the few things that gave life meaning. This was like hunting a superior predator, one that wasn't playing around, like Kisame, or withholding the killing blow because it held no profit, like Kakuzu. No, Yagura would trample him, if Naruto wasn't careful. One mistake, and it would be all over. A crimson hue of chakra appeared around Yagura, and his staff lashed out to Naruto's head, which the latter answered by blocking with a tree. Yagura's eyes widened slightly, if only for a moment, before he dodged Naruto's follow-up attack. Seems like you're even fast enough to evade my underground attacks. Naruto allowed the vines to sink back. This is going to be a pain in the ass. Then you should not have sided with those traitors. Yagura's voice was as lithe as his build. Those rebels? Nay, they're just prey, Naruto shrugged. Just like you. So you fight without purpose. How pitiful. Wrong again, I fight to survive. To become free. Foolish, Yagura let more of the Sanbai's chakra flow through him. All shinobi are tools for their superiors to use. All those who defy their Kage should perish. There is no place for traitors in this world,